Chapter 84. The medical staff from the police station had been scattered during the city riot. This time, the ones who came with them were the laboratory staff from the Heaven's Eye Society, and a few special agents with experience in battlefield first aid. They wore white coats and pretended to be angels in white. These people were better at dealing with gunshot wounds and electric shocks. When they saw so many arrow wounds, they were shocked. When the police officers passed them the plastic bags of broken limbs, they could only be described as stunned. Even a big hospital with thousands of people would have to work overtime with this amount of work. How could they do it with just a few people? How long would they have to work? Fortunately, criminals had no human rights in the eyes of the police. The police officers threw the broken limbs aside, meaning that it was fine if they could reattach them, but it was not a big deal if they could not. In fact, it was fine if a few of them died as long as not too many died. The former special agent and current medical staff understood what the police meant. They silently decided the fate of these brainless and disabled people on the ground. Coincidentally, the Paralympic Games were organized by the Paralympic Federation this year. These people were all strong and healthy. They could be pushed into the laboratory and violate 17 or 18 international conventions. They could secretly modify them and send them to the competition. They could even win glory for the country. The smell of blood at the scene interrupted Barbara and Robin's conversation. Robin was dizzy and did not understand what happened, but Barbara knew very well. This was all done by her? As far as I know, she's the only one who's good at archery in Gotham. The feline girl looked at the two bags of broken arms and legs, and seemed to have thought of some unpleasant experience. Her expression was a little ugly as she spoke. Barbara was completely speechless. She counted the number of people on the ground. There were a total of 30 people. Although some of them did not look like criminals since they were here, they must be accomplices or something. The image of Thea facing 30 people automatically appeared in her mind. Her arrows were like flying locusts. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. She thought back to when Thea entered the command vehicle. She did not seem to be injured. How could she beat up 30 people without any injuries? Barbara was stunned by this fact. She wasn't in her best condition today. Although it was difficult for her to fight 3 people, her limit was 5. Batman was probably the only one who could deal with 30 people swarming her. Perhaps his strength was really not that great? Thea didn't know that Barbara's confidence had been shaken by the results of this battle. But she quickly pulled herself together. Since she wasn't as good as others, she would work hard to catch up. When Batman returned, she would definitely train well. When Catwoman and the others returned to the command vehicle, they found that the culprit of the Gotham highway tragedy was sleeping soundly on the table. At this time, Thea had already changed into her usual attire. She didn't know if there was going to be another battle, and it was a little stuffy in the car, so she only wore a short tank top that exposed her arms, a pair of hot pants and a pair of slippers. She was sleeping soundly with her head tilted. A pair of long legs were somewhat dazzling under the reflection of the light in the car. Robin hadn't fully recovered yet, and his resistance was surprisingly weak. He couldn't help but take a few more glances. Ahem ahem. Bobla glared at her boyfriend. At the same time, she wondered if this guy was really that much more powerful than her. Looking at her lazy appearance, his firm belief was shaken again. Wake up, don't sleep. Catwoman nudged her. Who is it? Leave the meeting documents on my table. I'll sign them later, Thea said in a daze. She didn't even look at them before her head fell back down. Oh, they all thought. This was most likely how she worked in Star City. This was the typical style of a capitalist. Her subordinates were running around in the sun and wind, and her leader was sleeping soundly at home. The heavens really didn't have eyes for her company to not go bankrupt. Don't sleep, we still have to discuss the follow-up. Catwoman once again played the role of an alarm clock. This time she didn't push but shook Thea's shoulder. At this time, Thea had just dreamt of wearing the anti-Hulk armor, punching Superman, stepping on Neptune, and shocking the Justice League. Suddenly she felt the ground shake. After a while, she realized that it wasn't an earthquake, but someone was shaking her. Selena, stop messing around. Thea rubbed her eyes and looked at them listlessly. Tell me. Before she could finish, she suddenly saw Robin. Only then did she realize that there was a man here. She didn't wear many clothes, so didn't he see her naked? Previously, the team was mostly made up of women. The old director was so old that he was automatically excluded from the men's team. She subconsciously felt that the surroundings were safe, so she wore skimpy clothes. Now that she saw Robin, she immediately had the urge to explode. "I want to change my clothes, you get out." These words came out of her mouth almost word by word. As for who she meant by you, it was too easy to understand. In fact, the two women also felt uncomfortable with half of their clothes covered in blood and mud. Seeing that Thea had changed into casual clothes, they were a little tempted. At the same time, they stared at Robin with bright eyes. "Get out." Poor Robin still didn't understand what was going on. He was forced out of the command vehicle by the three women's gorgeous gazes. Subconsciously, he walked out of the vehicle and wondered, "How did I end up outside?" When the three women saw that the eyesore was out of their sight, they immediately started to change their clothes. Naturally, they compared their figures with each other. Everyone was changing their clothes as if nothing had happened, but in fact, their eyes were focused on the other two. "Her skin is so good. She's so big." Following the silent comparison between the three women, the three of them had seen through the other two without batting an eyelid. As for the process, it was too erotic and involved many parts that were not easy to describe. Everyone with lofty ideals can make their own associations, so I won't introduce the details here. Thea was dressed more formally this time. She wore a short-sleeved shirt, three-quarter pants, and a pair of flats. Her long brown hair was casually spread over her shoulders. Catwoman and Catwoman also changed into casual clothes. Among them, Catwoman's style was the most daring. She wore a tight top that made Thea feel suffocated. She couldn't help but think, "Don't you feel uncomfortable when you wear something like this? It's supposed to be comfortable clothes. What's the point of wearing something like this?" However, it was a person's freedom to dress and eat. She had no right to interfere with other people's dressing. She sighed and took out her phone to contact the old director, Laura, and the others. She also called Felicity, who felt uncomfortable sleeping here, and went to another RV to rest. They came quickly. As they entered the RV, Robin, who had been acting as a security guard outside the door, felt that there was no danger, so he carefully followed them into the RV. "Thea, the camp is still missing more than 100 people." The old director had been counting the number of people. When they recovered 1/3 of the city, there were a few hundred people living in the campus. Every day there were people moving in and out. It was hard to calculate the number, so the old director had to compare it 3 times to come up with this number. Chapter 85. Thea pondered for a moment and said to Felicity, "Check the surveillance cameras in the school and the surveillance cameras in the surrounding streets." It didn't take long for them to track them down. 3 trucks drove out of the campus at 3:15 p.m. last night. They passed by 6th Street and drove north. I couldn't see them after that. Felicity was still a little lethargic, but she still managed to find some clues. There were more than 100 people. Thea rubbed her head. She wanted to tell them to just let them take them away. Maybe they invited them to dinner, but how could that be possible? If they kidnapped more than 100 people from her place, would they kidnap more people from other places as well? It was inevitable that they would kidnap her. The kidnappers were after something big, and she had no choice but to accept the challenge. She thought for a moment and said, "First of all, Chief Gordon, please send the elites of the police department to the last location to look for tire tracks, witnesses, and any other clues." Thea looked at the old chief. They were professionals in this field, and she didn't need to guide them. "Next, please ask the researchers of the Heavens Eye Society to test the substance in the gas masks. This substance should be able to absorb the nerve gas in the air and extract it. Then it can be used to measure the concentration of nerve gas in the air. Along the way, it can be used to map out the escape route of the kidnappers." Although Laura didn't understand everything, she understood about 70% to 80% and nodded. "Lastly, you guys, we caught a lot of criminals, so you should be able to get some clues." Thea looked at the 3 generals of Batman's family and friends. This was their traditional method of catching criminals and beating them to death in order to find clues. To be honest, Thea thought this method was stupid, but she still arranged it to give them something to do. Her words were very much in line with their intentions. They did not want to go to the streets or run around like fools with instruments. Interrogation by torture was very much in line with their usual style. Whips and daggers were ready-made. They were skilled and experienced. Hanging criminals up and beating them was the most suitable job for them. That's it then. Let's split up. Thea arranged their work and was ready to bury her head in the blanket and sleep after separating from them. She didn't know if she could continue her beautiful dream after being disturbed by Catwoman. Bang! The door of the command vehicle was abruptly pushed open. A tall black man with white hair ran in with a few steps. Who was this? Thea's first reaction was that her real identity had been exposed. Should she kill him or knock him out and kidnap him? But soon, she realized that the people in the car didn't seem surprised. This man didn't seem to be an enemy. Lucius, what's wrong? Chief Gordon didn't understand why this old man was here. When Thea heard the name, she immediately thought of Voldemort and the Death Eaters. But soon, she knew that this black man wouldn't take out his wand and cast a green light on her because she had seen this man's picture before. It wasn't a memory from the other world, but a picture she saw when she was working at Quinn Group. His name seemed to be Lucius Fox, the president or vice president of Wayne Group. They didn't know what had happened when they saw him rushing in. They were about to leave the car, but they stopped. James, something's wrong. You have to think of a way. The old man was out of breath. Felicity quickly handed him a glass of water. Thank you. The old man looked at the girl in front of him and realized that he didn't know her. But since it was urgent, he didn't have time to be polite. He grabbed the chief and ran out. Looking at the two old men who were almost 120 years old and looking like they were about to elope, Thea quickly stopped them. Excuse me, what happened? Can you tell me? She had just assigned the chief a task and now they were dragging him away. Wouldn't that make her lose face? Lucius realized that he didn't know this girl either. He was confused for a moment. Did I enter the wrong house because of my old age? He looked around the command vehicle and saw that he knew most of the people in the vehicle. This was strange. Chief Gordon had always been a steady person. To put it bluntly, he was not a quick-witted person. He could do things step by step very well, but whenever there was an unexpected situation, he would be dumbfounded. At this time, he did not think that he could provide much help to the old black man. On the contrary, he admired Sia's intelligence and resourcefulness. Lucius, what's going on? Don't worry, they're all trustworthy young people. Okay. Even though I don't think you can help, I received news that Talia is going to hold a board meeting this morning to announce Bruce's disappearance. At the same time, she will confirm her son's right to inherit Bruce's shares. We really can't think of a way, so... The few people in the vehicle were silent when they heard the news. Laura and Felicity didn't care about the matter. They also knew that the child was indeed Batman's son, so there was no problem with the inheritance. Gordon, his daughter, and Robin also felt that this was someone else's family matter. As outsiders, it wasn't appropriate for them to interfere, and they had no legitimate reason to stop it. Talia was ruthless and didn't leave herself a way out. She used the Assassin League's intelligence network to spread the news that the child was Batman's. The idlers like Superman and the Martian Manhunter didn't find Bruce himself. Otherwise, they would have flown over to send congratulatory gifts. This matter was so big that it couldn't be fake. Catwoman wasn't as helpless as the others. Her expression was very ugly, and her knuckles were cracking. She wanted to hit someone but didn't know who to hit. Lucius, we want to stop this, but we really can't. You. Chief Gordon didn't know what to say to his old friend. He forced himself to say a few words and couldn't continue. Let me interrupt. Don't you all want Talia's son to inherit his father's shares? Who's included in this? Thea saw that they all looked as if their father had died. She didn't want to care, but she was afraid that it would affect future operations, so she still asked. Lucius also knew that Talia's move was very vicious and almost incurable. He came to Gordon with the intention of making a last-ditch effort. But in the face of Thea's question, he replied, Me and Alfred. Also, Selena will oppose it too. Catwoman would definitely oppose it. She couldn't wait to kill them with a big knife. This hatred was greater than the sky and deeper than the sea. Although she wasn't with Batman for money, she couldn't suppress her anger when she thought of a pile of money that originally belonged to her floating before her eyes and falling into someone else's pocket. Although Barbara didn't get along with her, she also made her position clear. Oppose. She took the lead in opposing, and Robin also changed from being neutral to opposing. I'm against it too, but our opposition is useless. Gordon also expressed his support for his old friend. Chapter 86. Since all of you are against it, what if Mr. Bruce comes back and agrees? Will he be angry that we made the decision for him? Sia saw that they were so aggressive, but she still asked, Master Bruce won't settle the score later, right? Do you have a solution? You don't have to worry about Bruce. He won't agree. Even if he agrees, he can't do anything if all of us oppose it. Lucius had been a CEO for many years and was good at reading people's expressions. When he saw that Thea was calm, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. As for Master Bruce settling the score later, he wasn't afraid at all. The people in this room were either his friends or comrades, and he couldn't go against their collective opinion. Actually, I don't think this is a big problem. Thea thought for a while and felt that it really wasn't a big deal. Old Lucius's arrogant look could only be said that his thinking was limited. I don't know if you know, but I have shares in Wayne Group. Thea stretched out a finger and said slowly. She had only found out about this a while ago. My father bought 0.5% and 0.7% shares in Wayne Group for me and my brother. Of course, these shares aren't directly under our names. After my brother passed away, these shares automatically went to me, so I have 1.2% of the shares. You want to initiate a shareholder's motion of no confidence to deny Talia's legal inheritance? But your shares are still too little. Lucius was too lazy to think about how this girl had Wayne Group's shares. He had worked hard for many years, and Bruce had plundered from the board of directors, so he held about 1% of the group's shares. It seemed like a small amount, but considering the scale of Wayne Group, it was a lot of money. It's a lot less, but our Quinn Group holds 3.5% of Wayne Group's shares, and the Merlin Group has about the same amount of shares. I can help you get these. Mr. Lucius Fox, let me introduce myself. I'm Thea Quinn. The old man felt that the world was changing too fast. He took off his reading glasses and looked at the girl in front of him. He had never seen her before. He hesitated and asked, Is Moira Quinn yours? It's my mother. Thea answered straightforwardly. This was something that everyone on Earth knew. Oh, I've met both your mother and Mr. Steele. I didn't expect. Lucius and Moira were just acquaintances, but he had a good relationship with Steele, the black man who almost became Thea's stepfather. Perhaps it was because black people had a common language. Towards him acting like an elder, Thea couldn't say anything. He was indeed very old and still would call him uncle when she saw him. Her status was even lower, so she didn't plan on chatting with him. Thea just nodded with a faint smile for him to continue. But it's still not enough, isn't it? Our board of directors' veto power must be at least 15% of the shares. The old black man collected his thoughts and returned to reality. That's not difficult. Let me introduce you to Miss Laura. She's an important member of the government and can indirectly influence some companies. They should also have some shares in Wayne Group. Thea pointed at Laura, who was watching the show from the side, but didn't introduce her identity as an agent. She vaguely referred to her as an important member of the government. Laura, who had been in the army all her life, did not understand the internecine nature of the modern corporate system. Previously, she did not realize what role she could play in this matter. But now that Sia mentioned it, she immediately realized what she could do. What affected the company? It was basically a government company. She could not guarantee that everyone would listen to her just by making a call, but she could at least call 7 or 8 companies. Moreover, if she could not do it, there was still Amanda. It wasn't difficult to do this, and the favor given was sufficient. It was just a matter of making a few phone calls, and she didn't have to risk her life. This was very much in line with her current mission of providing charcoal in snowy weather. She didn't ask for Amanda's permission and nodded at Lucius's pleading gaze. Next, under the gaze of everyone in the room, Sia made 2 phone calls, one to her mother and one to Malcolm. Although the 2 of them were a little confused, they did not waste any time and gave her the phone numbers of a few Wayne shareholders, telling her that she was one of them and that she could contact them without worry. Laura was even faster. She contacted 3 or 4 companies. The 2 women and Lucius hid at the side and counted the shares in their hands. It easily exceeded 15%. Fu, as the butler of the Wayne family for many years, also had some shares, but the amount was very small. The few of them pieced together to complete the task. Mr. Lucius, you still need to raise the proposal. Our people are only responsible for supporting it. You have to understand that. Thea wrote 2 phone numbers to the old man and asked him to contact them himself. If one's family had too much say in other companies, it could easily cause a chain reaction. This was a problem with the rules of the game. Destroying this foundation could easily lead to other people's imaginations. Was the Quinn family trying to increase their right to speak? Was it a hostile takeover? This was something that Thea didn't want to see. I understand. The old man still understood this point. After all, he hadn't been eating rice for so many years for nothing. Thea sent away Lucius, who had come in a hurry and left with light steps, with a look that said, "I'm here to die, so you can go." Everyone in the room watched as she casually solved the previous big problem in less than 10 minutes. Everyone looked at her as if they were looking at a rich person. Why are you looking at me? Isn't this normal? Our national situation is like this. Mr. Bruce also has shares in our Quinn group. Don't just stand there, get to work. Thea was annoyed by their stares and quickly reminded them that there were still citizens in the hands of criminals waiting for them to rescue them. Only then did they disperse and go about their own business. Catwoman was extremely agitated and was even more certain that she had to work hard. After this incident, she would have to work overtime to accumulate wealth. Robin hugged his girlfriend and walked to a place where no one was around. He was still muttering softly. How much money do you think she has? Definitely richer than you. Barbara returned to the campus and had already taken out her equipment. She picked up the whip and waved it a few times. She was ready to vent her frustration when the criminal didn't speak. Thea didn't know that her friends were hurt by her flaunting of wealth. She ordered Felicity to control the drone to search for clues while she calmly ran to the RV to rest. During lunch that day, the few of them gathered again. Of course, it wasn't for a meal, but to summarize the information from various aspects. Old Gordon, who had been promoted from captain to intelligence team leader, summarized the information that they had gathered. There are missing people in every city. The exact number is hard to calculate, but their base didn't hide it. Director Gordon took out a map and pointed at a place on the map. It was here. The few Gotham locals in the room gasped. Thea, who didn't know the inside story, asked the question of the foreign support team. Your map is white and there's no name on it. How do we know where this is? Please explain. This is Arkham Asylum. Chapter 87. Even Thea and Lara, who weren't locals, were shocked when they heard the name. It would be an exaggeration to say that the name resounded throughout the multiverse, but it definitely shocked the entire Americas. Arkham Asylum. Just listen to the name, this wasn't a result that was created by people who hadn't gone mad yet or had already gone mad. This was a place of no return that was created using their brains and lives. As the landmark of Gotham, Arkham Asylum and Blackgate Prison were the top choice for youths who wanted to join the mafia. If a promising young man could get a release certificate from Blackgate Prison and a stable condition notice from Arkham Asylum's Mental Health Committee, then this person would be able to apply for a job at Penguin Man or one of the 5 major crime families in the city. These 2 places were similar to the martial arts school and magic school in novels. Blackgate Prison was responsible for all kinds of combat training, while Arkham was responsible for all kinds of spiritual guidance. For most of the Americans, Blackgate Prison's teachings were child's play. Arkham was the real place to be reborn. Now that they suddenly heard that a large group of criminals had gathered in such a terrifying place, and had captured countless citizens to undergo some kind of mental or physical transformation, this bad news gave Thea a headache. Seeing Barbara, who was always keen on giving advice, frowning, Thea knew that they were more or less afraid. Yes, the Golden Thigh Batman wasn't here. And these small accounts heard that they were going to go straight from a 5-man dungeon to a group dungeon. Not only were they afraid, even Thea herself was feeling a little guilty. However, she was still the leader who had fallen into her lap, so she couldn't let them down. At times like this, her old comrade was more reliable. She ordered Felicity, send out the drone and scout. Also send the real-time interface to this car. Felicity replied with an "oh" and went to do her work. Looking at her optimistic attitude, it was unclear whether Arkham had little effect on her, or she was just naturally bold. Director, Do you have a map of Arkham? Let's discuss the attack route. Could they not attack? Of course they could. Thea didn't want to go. She wanted to contact Amanda to send a Hellfire missile to her comrades in the asylum. It was safe, fast, and worry-free. However, his current identity was that of a hero on the side of justice. Furthermore, he was the kind of big brother or big sister that led the group. He definitely could not say this. If they were unwilling to go, then he could reluctantly go along with the situation and not go. However, to Gordon and Barbara, who had a sense of justice of 100 and a sense of justice of 99, they would rather die than give up on the hostages and live their lives peacefully. Under Thea's regretful gaze, Gordon excitedly carried a bunch of blueprints. Who knew which idiot was the one who came up with the city? Arkham wasn't just a wooden house, it was a large administrative area, similar to Chaoyang and Pudong. Thea looked at the detailed map of the asylum. This place, which could be called a hospital for the time being, took up a lot of space. It was far larger than a normal hospital. It took up almost 100,000 square meters of space. It was difficult to calculate, but it was around 150,000 to 200,000 square meters. Come and take a look. I'm already outside the asylum. Felicity controlled the drone to fly above the asylum like a remote control plane. The few of them quickly walked to the screen to take a look. This was Thea's first time seeing this famous building. From the outside, it didn't have a hellish atmosphere. Just like all the buildings in Gotham, it was dark, dilapidated, old, and had a hysterical restlessness. It's just SOSO. Only the simple-minded Felicity could say that. She pursed her lips and skillfully activated her invisibility, thermal imaging, and many other functions. As the drone descended, they gradually saw the situation in the courtyard. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was overcrowded. Less than 100 square meters, there were 5 gun-wielding criminals patrolling the area. In less than half a minute, 3 patrol teams had passed by this area. Felicity didn't dare to descend too low. The optical camouflage ensured that most people couldn't see her, but the drone's sound couldn't be hidden. Since they couldn't enter the building, she controlled the drone to fly around the wall outside the courtyard. Fortunately, with the thermal imaging technology, Thea and the others followed closely behind the wall, looking for the best attack point according to the old map. There are too many people here, Thea mumbled after looking at the map for a long time. Based on the thermal imaging alone, there were thousands of people. Perhaps the criminals were only 1/10 of them? That was still a shocking number. The 5 of them couldn't take on so many people. Wait, fly back a little more. Gordon saw something and stopped Felicity. A vague figure appeared on the screen. The person was inside the building. The drone's camera was looking through the window, so the image was very blurry. Can you zoom in a little more? Gordon squinted for a long time but couldn't confirm it. It's the same if you zoom in. This is a commercial drone, not a military one. But we have other methods. This was developed by the Quinn Corporation for the Star City Police Department. Unfortunately, someone messed up our plan. Felicity opened the facial recognition software as she spoke. At the same time, she glanced at Catwoman. The Catgirl looked embarrassed and winked at him. Why do you keep bringing this up? Didn't we just let it go? The comparison on the computer was very fast. Soon, a clear headshot was found beside the blurry image. The similarity is 95%. This is the person. What a weird name. Oswald Copperfield. Felicity bit on her pen and looked at the results on the computer. She felt that the person looked weird and indescribable. The few locals in Gotham looked at each other. Their expressions were not good. They said in unison, "Penguin. Continue to investigate." Thea didn't think that this guy was scary. He didn't have any superpowers, his fighting skills were ordinary, his height was tragic, and he even had a limp. What were they afraid of? Thea felt that she was bullying someone like him. As they continued to patrol in the sky, they had a rough idea of the outer guards. It was worth mentioning that there were not only the Scarecrow elites, but also many gang members. According to Gordon, they were all subordinates of Penguin. He had once unified Gotham's underground forces. Although it wasn't as powerful as before, he still had many loyal followers. Chapter 88. Just by looking at the periphery of the asylum, one could see that there were many different types of criminals here. There were elites in American equipment, hooligans in singlets and shorts holding axes, and many abnormal people who were foolishly laughing at the trees. Felicity turned on the thermal imaging system and operated the drone as if she was playing a game. She carefully avoided all heat sources and kept sending information to the command vehicle. Dang! The screen shook for a while. What did he bump into? Before they could understand what was going on, a man in armor that looked like a spacesuit appeared in front of the camera. He was holding a huge gun that looked like it came straight out of a sci-fi movie. The strange man was stunned for a moment before he understood what was going on. He raised the weapon in his hand with a ferocious smile on his face. A thin mist was released and the signal in the command vehicle turned black. Freeze! 3 voices were heard at the same time. Felicity pouted and tossed the controller away as though her favorite toy had been snatched away. She lay down lazily on the sofa beside her. Thea had a vague impression of this person. She only remembered that he was a scientist who was trying to save his wife. She did not say anything as she looked at the people from Gotham and waited for them to explain. Director Gordon had already pulled out a large amount of hair in such a short time. Facing the questioning eyes of the duo from Star City, he still pondered for a moment. This is Mr. Freeze. His real name is Victor Ferris. He's a scientist, an expert in cryogenics. In order to freeze his terminally ill wife, he had been conducting research on human cryogenics. Later, there was an experiment accident. His body had undergone a large-scale mutation, and he became cold-blooded. That's why your drone didn't see him. He has no body temperature. Director Gordon recalled the information he knew and gave a simple description of this person's past. Now that Freeze is in Arkham, it can't be Scarecrow who is the leader. There must be someone more powerful commanding them. Barbara made her own analysis. Thea had already thought of this when she saw Penguin Man. How could the former underground emperor of Gotham listen to a former university professor? Conversely, it was also impossible. Now that she saw Freeze, her theory was confirmed. We've already met 3 famous mini-bosses? Could there be other villains? Thea felt that according to Murphy's Law, there were probably more. Was the world consciousness retaliating against him because he did not take the usual path and called on the citizens to stand up and resist? He did not take the old path of superheroes? Should I gather all the villains together and attack them all in one go? Thea rubbed her chin with her right hand as she looked at the people on her side. She could be considered a first-rate hero while the rest were second-rate heroes. Considering that the other side had a hidden boss, the righteous side was obviously weaker. Furthermore, Arkham's terrain was complicated, and they had to fight it head-on without being able to escape. Could it be that they had no choice but to launch a people's war? Thea thought about it over and over again. There was no way she could defeat so many villains with just the few of them. Moreover, the villains all had their underlings. Previously, Barbara and the others had a hard time fighting 3 to 5 elites. She estimated that there were at least a few hundred of them here. Without helpers, the few of them wouldn't be able to do anything. Thea looked at Gordon. Director, if we want to save the people in Arkham, we have to mobilize as many people as we can. We can't rely on just the few of us. What do you mean? Gather all the police officers and hand over your weapons. You can use the city council's name or the government's name. We need a large number of armed forces that we can control. Thea glanced at Lara. Skies, I will cooperate with us and find those who are not that mentally ill. The American people were actually very tragic. A group of politicians with holes in their brains mocked the entire world, followed by conscription. Therefore, there were many citizens who had served in the military and fought in wars. Among them, there were those who had no connections and survived the war. When they returned home without a job or a wife, they started to feel uncomfortable. Many of them walked the path of criminals. Among them, there were famous people like the Archer of Death, and there were even more nameless people in cars. There were countless of them. Thea did not dare to arm these people. They were already suffering from the war, and with the atmosphere in Gotham, it would be a miracle if they did not go crazy. She had always used the police officers as the main force and a few of the citizens as support. This time, she had no choice but to use them as cannon fodder. She also ordered Felicity to make a speech about the mayor, calling on the hot-blooded citizens to stand up for justice and protect the truth. She also called for the American dream to be broadcasted over the entire city. What? The mayor was still in Bane's hands? Of course Thea knew, but didn't the citizens not know? As a former hacker, it was too easy for her to make some video clips. As for whether Bane would make use of the mayor to create a propaganda station, Felicity, who had control over many of Gotham's satellites, was not afraid. Even though Bane was known for his resourcefulness, his intelligence was more focused on plotting and scheming than on the internet. Sia believed that Felicity could take on 100 Banes on the internet. They did not have any objections to her bold and false propaganda. After all, the mayor was not a good person. Whether he was killed by Bane or impeached by the Senate, it had nothing to do with them. They could pull as many cannon fodder as they could, but the main force was still a little weak. Thea looked at Batman's friends and family. Can you find any more allies? Barbara and Robin were both newbies in the industry, and they were not as fresh as Sia. They both shook their heads, indicating that they only had each other and could not tolerate any outsiders. Catwoman was a little hesitant. I'll try to find a few friends, but the chances are not high. She was right. If she had friends all over the world, why would she invite Thea from so far away? Most of her friends were used and almost none of them helped her. Sia nodded. She didn't have much hope for her so-called friends. She didn't have much hope for them. Seeing that the few of them went out to do their own things, Thea and Lara walked to the side. Miss Lara, thank you for your help. Without your help, I really don't know what to do. Lara could tell that she was just being polite. She smiled and did not say anything, waiting for her to continue. Does the Sky's Eye Society have any technological weapons that can make everyone in Arkham faint, like the poisonous gas last night? Thea really did not want to rush in and fight head-on. That would be too stupid. Chapter 89. As for Thea's question, Lara really didn't know. First of all, although her rank was high, she was only in charge of administrative work. It was impossible for her to come into contact with the core secrets of the Heaven's Eye Society. Even if she did, it would be through various code names and pronouns. She wouldn't know what she was dealing with. She could only vaguely say, "No, we really don't. We're a kind, conscientious, and responsible government organization. We've never done any research on poison gas or anything against humanity." Thea guessed that Lara wouldn't dare to say anything, so she didn't want to make things difficult for her. If you don't have one, I can come up with one myself. The two said goodbye and Thea went to find the researchers of the Heaven's Eye Society. She wanted to see if there were any ready-made weapons that could be modified by her imagination. However, the reality was cruel. Thea busied herself for the whole afternoon but didn't come up with any results. When the topic of poison gas was brought up, the researchers shook their heads. No matter how Thea tried to reason with them, there was no such thing. However, Thea knew from their expressions that they definitely had it, and it was quite a lot. However, they wouldn't say anything even if they died. Lara said that it was fine even if all the agents were sacrificed, but she didn't say anything about poison gas. Thea was helpless. Since they said they didn't have it, she would assume that they didn't have it. If poison gas didn't work, how about sonic weapons? The few of them studied the outer walls and various partitions of the asylum, and came to a conclusion. When it was first built, it was definitely built with sufficient materials. The walls were extremely thick. The C4 that could blow their command vehicle up into the sky might only be able to blow up half of the walls in Arkham. The walls could absorb 90% of the sound waves, unless there was one in every room. However, there were hundreds of rooms here. The cost of a sonic bomb wasn't cheap, so it was unrealistic. Similarly, the magnetic bomb was also abandoned. Smoke bombs could be used, but the space in the room was too big. They would need to make a giant smoke bomb that covered 100,000 square meters. Currently, they didn't have the technology to do so. Thea thought until her head hurt, but she couldn't come up with any good ideas. She went back to her room in a daze and planned to brainstorm them tomorrow. Boom! Bang! Thea had overused her brain and was sleeping soundly without any dreams. Suddenly, she heard the sound of an explosion. Was someone setting off firecrackers? Spring Festival? No. Spring Festival my ass, this is Christmas, alright? Opening his eyes, a vague thought appeared in his mind. Could it be that the enemy is attacking again? Last night, he had tormented himself the entire night. He cursed Chief Gordon in his heart. This lousy place you found is attacked every 2 or 3 days. I really have to hand it to you. He hurriedly put on his uniform and looked out of the window. From time to time there would be flames. The school had evacuated all the civilians in the afternoon, so there was no chaotic scene. Thea left the room and went outside. All the important people were here. This made her feel more at ease. She was afraid that she would be taken away again. She had to save her teammates every night and sleep during the day. She couldn't live like this. Just as he was about to say that he didn't care who the enemy was, only where the enemy was, he saw Lara Gordon and a few other agents take out their pistols and shoot at the sky. Who are you shooting at? Thea quickly looked up at the sky and saw a purple figure swaying in the sky. From time to time it would shoot some unknown green substance to the ground. Who is this? Thea's first thought was that it was a small boss from Arkham. After all, looking at its appearance and equipment, it must be a famous guy. Now, everyone was helpless against the enemy in the sky. It was similar to how she went in and out 3 times last night. However, on second thought, it didn't seem right. You came alone without any fear. Aren't you afraid of being surrounded? She was very careful last night. Could it be that Gotham's boss was so fierce? Thea was too lazy to ask for the name. After a rough observation, this guy wasn't difficult to deal with. She called out to everyone. Stop shooting, I'll take care of him. She jumped on the skateboard and flew towards the unknown target in the sky. When she got closer, Thea saw that the person was wearing a purple striped shirt. He was holding a strange gun and was constantly shooting green mucus on the ground. Disgusting. Thea clenched her teeth. You Gotham people sure have character. You don't care about the city's appearance and come out to do bad things. She didn't notice it when she was on the ground, but when she was in the sky, she noticed that this person wasn't floating like Thea. Instead, he was carrying something like a flamethrower. Every few seconds, he would shoot at the air and use the reaction force to stay in the air for a short time. This person was jumping. Each time he shot, he would jump 20 meters. After the kinetic energy was used up, he would shoot again and jump again. She didn't know what fuel his flamethrowers were using. The exhaust gas was black, and every time he jumped, he would shoot out a large amount of black smoke. Thea felt that the PM2.5 around here must have been exceeded by this guy. It was such an ugly way of flying, but this person was still laughing foolishly. What the hell was he laughing at? Thea felt that this guy had unknowingly pulled down the average technological hero or villain. Look at Mr. Freeze from before. No matter how evil he was and how many people he killed, his equipment was beautiful and sci-fi. This guy was purely embarrassing, and he still dared to take it out in broad daylight. She didn't sleep well, and she almost vomited her dinner because of this guy. Thea was ready to teach him a lesson that he would never forget. She increased her altitude and flew above the guy's head. She had no choice. This guy's butt was smoking, and his front was spraying green water. Who knew if it was poisonous? Thea didn't want to be stained by it as a souvenir. While he was jumping, she quietly came to the back of his head. It was a waste to use arrows to deal with this guy. In fact, it was difficult to aim at an airborne target. Thea found an opportunity and quickly rushed over when he was spraying green water at the people on the ground. Who's there? The guy finally realized that something was wrong when Thea was less than 100 meters away. He was still thinking about how Gotham had a hero who could fly. Then he saw 2 beams of white light rushing towards him. Thea didn't know if Batman's team could beat this guy, but she was too lazy to ask. Her own method was more suitable for her. She didn't use arrows this time. When she was 100 meters behind him, she stepped on the mechanism with both feet. From both sides of the skateboard, iron chains as thick as a child's arm shot out. There were special alloy arrowheads at the ends of the chains. Poof! Poof! The sharp arrowheads pierced the guy's thigh and shoulder. The arrowheads quickly split into 3 smaller arrowheads and firmly grabbed the target. Ah! Before the guy could finish screaming, he was forced back into his mouth by the high-speed wind. Don't you like to fly? Seeing how happy you were flying just now, Sia decided to be a good person and help you out. Sister will fly with you. Chapter 90. Thea looked at the enemy who had been pierced by the chains from front to back. So he probably wouldn't fall. She didn't care if he was dead or alive. She raised the skateboard to a height of 500 meters and flew around Gotham at full speed. 150 kilometers per hour, 200 kilometers per hour, 300 kilometers per hour. When her speed reached 350 kilometers per hour, she felt a little dizzy and slowed down. This was faster than the highest speed she could reach during the test. It seemed that her body was gradually adapting to the high speed of the skateboard. Thea lowered her head and glanced at the man in purple who had been pierced by 2 chains. He had already fainted when she was halfway through the city. She didn't know if it was due to excessive blood loss or the high-speed pressure. "Serves you right. You bastard. How dare you show off in front of me? How dare you show off in front of me when you're flying in such an ugly manner? I'll cripple you even if you don't die. You'll be traumatized when you think about flying in the future." Since the enemy had already fainted, Thea was too lazy to continue flying. She identified the direction and returned to the camp as fast as lightning. When she got off the skateboard, there were already police officers who wanted to take the man in purple away. However, after looking at him for a long time, they realized that the chains had already pierced through his body. If they pulled them out, it was hard to say if the man would survive. The few of them didn't dare to face the ferocious demon Queen Thea directly. They could only look at their boss, Chief Gordon, for help. Thea's perceptive sense was becoming more and more skillful. Naturally, she felt that something was wrong with them and pressed a switch on the side of the skateboard. Swoosh, swoosh. The opened arrowheads closed up and quickly bounced back into the skateboard. As for the man in purple, he didn't bleed profusely. When he was flying at high altitude, the wound had already frozen, so his life wasn't in danger for the time being. Thea had recently understood the unspoken rules of this world's heroes. Not killing was certain and inevitable, but criminals could be severely injured as long as they didn't die at the time. If they died in the hospital, it would be a medical dispute and had nothing to do with heroes. Batman had long understood this principle and practiced it. However, the Flash, who hadn't appeared yet, was in the category of people who didn't understand it. The future Flash was conflicted by the principle of not killing. This was a story for the future, so let's not talk about it for now. Understanding the rules of the game was good news. Thea was previously afraid that she would be kicked out of the righteous faction if she went overboard. Now that she knew the unspoken rules, things would be much easier. The 2 police officers took the man in purple away for questioning. They hesitated for a moment and decided not to handcuff him. There was a fist-sized hole in the man's thigh, and his bones, muscles, and lymph were all mixed up like a mess of mud. Not to mention whether he could run away or not, whether he could walk normally in the future was a big question mark. The few of them prepared to take a look at the confession. Perhaps this guy would have some information about Arkham. Thea was not sleepy at the moment, so she followed them in. Speaking of which, who is this guy? After walking for a while, Thea realized that no one was talking. She casually asked a question with the intention of chatting. Everyone was speechless. "You don't even know him? You flew for half an hour with such deep hatred, and you don't even know who he is?" As the former team leader and now the deputy team leader, Director Gordon quickly explained. "His name is Daruri Walker. His code name is Killer Moth. He's a millionaire. Logically speaking, he didn't commit any serious crime, so he shouldn't have attacked us." Director Gordon was confused. Enemies kept popping up one after another, making him feel physically and mentally exhausted. Thea wanted to laugh. Killer Moth, Killer Crocodile. Their names were similar. Could they be brothers? Coincidentally, both of them were destroyed by her. One of them was diving while the other was flying. Their cooperation should be quite effective. It was strange that they didn't team up. However, she didn't take these words to heart. She wouldn't be afraid even if Killer 47 came, let alone Killer 1 and Killer 2. As the medical staff entered, Killer Moth gradually regained consciousness. The agents took out 2 ounces of truth-telling serum and poured it down his throat. In less than 3 minutes, the agent passed the confession to Laura. He quickly glanced at the few of them and bowed before leaving. This guy didn't come from Arkham. He's here to look for the stolen item. Laura looked at a certain someone with a faint smile. At this moment, everyone including Thea turned to look at a certain someone. It couldn't be helped. A certain someone had too many records in this area. No matter who the enemy was, he would use the Flying Dragon's cloud-searching hand. He would search until there was nothing left of the enemy before he attacked. "Selina? Can you explain?" Thea looked at Catwoman with a strange expression. "Ah-ha-ha. This bastard probably put a tracking device on the painting. I'm so sorry." Catwoman scratched her head awkwardly and stuck out her tongue. Thea was speechless. "Big sister, you're going for the sexy route. Why are you acting cute all of a sudden? Do you think I'll let you go just because you're cute? Besides, we asked you to look for reinforcements. Is this how you look for reinforcements? You're just being taunted by the monster and then being dragged back to the camp to fight. I'm in the wrong here. Did I go a little too far? They were only here to catch the thief. It wasn't a big mistake. Thea carefully looked at their expressions. Although they didn't look too good, they were still within the normal range. Thea instantly understood. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It seemed like Master Bruce had dealt with this before. Then she wouldn't have any psychological burden. Director Gordon calmly ordered the officers to continue the interrogation. The truth-telling serum was still effective. The agents were eager to make a contribution this time, so they poured a lot of it. After all, this person wasn't a good person. He instructed the officers to find out all the bad things that his ancestors had done. They had to nail him down and make it an irrefutable case. The few of them didn't mention the killer moth anymore. They chatted about the weather for a while, as if this person had never been here. Sia also felt that it was very righteous and heroic to beat the owner into a cripple, and then accuse the victim in the end. Was this the connection between the higher-ups? If it weren't for Catwoman's relationship with Batman, with her 1-meter-tall criminal record, she would have been locked up in the Black Gate for a long time. For the next 3 days, the entire camp was bustling with activity. More and more police officers joined the Arkham assault team. Director Gordon was indeed a person of virtue and prestige. With a single call, he had already recruited more than 300 official police officers and more than 200 auxiliary police officers. At the same time, Felicity's elaborate fake mayor's recruitment order was broadcasted on all the major channels. The image showed the mayor crying and complaining about the atrocities of Gotham's criminals and his own powerlessness. He called on the passionate citizens who had joined the army to take up arms and protect the city. At the bottom of the screen, Director Gordon's phone number and the camp's address were also displayed. It had to be said that the foreigners were really practical. In just a few days, they had gathered more than 200 veterans who had participated in many wars. These people didn't need any training. They could fight as long as they picked up a weapon. Lara had also secretly ordered her subordinates to investigate the families of these people, and eliminated a dozen of them who didn't have any family background and looked gloomy. Chapter 91. On the night of the third day, Catwoman, whom the people had high hopes for, managed to trick a reinforcement into coming to her aid. Thea glanced at the person in front of her. She could only see a small part of her lips and chin. She seemed to have been burned. Her entire body was covered in black and yellow clothing. She carried a large can on her back and held a strange-looking gun in her hand. Was that a flamethrower? Thea could tell that the person was a woman from the 2 lumps on her chest. At least, she did not remember any man in DC with such things on his clothes. Before she could ask, Feline Girl had already started the introduction. Of course, it was for Sia and the others. All the locals knew each other. This is my friend, Bridget Parker. Her code name is Firefly. She will help us deal with Mr. Freeze. Catwoman then introduced her teammates and the duo from Star City. However, Thea did not think that the person was listening. She seemed to be thinking about something. Well, it did not matter. It was good news that she could deal with Mr. Freeze. Thea started her career with frost arrows, so she was powerless against this ability. Now that someone volunteered to fight Mr. Freeze as the commander, she was more than happy to welcome her. Looking at Firefly's equipment, her ability was obviously to spit fire. Fighting fire with water? Seemed to be worth watching. Firefly Parker was not a talkative person. She listened to Catwoman's introduction with a blank face. Just when Thea thought that she could not speak, she said with a hoarse voice, "Mr. Freeze is mine." It was easy to understand what she was trying to say. She did not care about the others and they could do whatever they wanted. Thea did not know where Catwoman found such a unique friend. Was she really her friend? She gave Catwoman a helpless look, implying that she should deal with it herself. Catwoman knew Firefly's personality. She knew that Firefly did not like to see strangers after being burned. She greeted the others and led Firefly to a place to rest. Just as Thea wanted to prepare for a few more days, Gordon and Felicity came to her in a hurry. "We have to act now." The old director was so busy that he was dizzy. When he saw Thea practicing archery in a corner, he was envious. That's right. Many people in the city have been captured and sent to the asylum, and none of them have come out, Felicity said anxiously as she hugged her tablet. Since so many people had been captured, the other party must be planning something big. Moreover, it was obvious that these people were not captured to treat others to a meal. The city was in chaos, and they did not need to do any heavy physical labor. There was only one reason why they needed so many people: human experiments. Thea was not sure if her guess was correct. She asked the local director, "Why do they need so many people?" "There is a secret lab under Arkham." Their initial project was called Indian Mountain. It was used for human experiments, but it was abandoned many years ago. Gordon sighed as he recalled the past. What did they research? Do you have any recollection of it? The duo from Star City was curious, especially Felicity. Perhaps all hackers had a strong thirst for knowledge. When she heard the information that was not available on the internet, her lips parted slightly. Her nose trembled slightly, and her eyes shone brightly as she waited for the director to reveal the answer. Gordon thought for a while. It should be an experiment to revive the dead. However, the results were not ideal. During the experiment, they fused the DNA of various animals into the human body. Some people even gained superpowers because of it. Thea's first reaction when she heard about superpowers was to say, F***CK. If they captured thousands of people, there should be at least a few hundred successful experiments, right? If a few hundred superpowers swarmed her, she would have to run. However, these superpowers are not strong. I could handle them one-on-one when I was young. Gordon did not know if it was because he was panting or if he was trying to impress them, but he split his sentence into two parts. Thea regained her confidence after hearing what he said. She glanced at the director's physique and imagined his body when he was young. Although it was a little offensive, it seemed like he could take on 7 or 8 people at once. If that was the extent of his combat power, it was indeed not that impressive. However, it had been 20 years since then. Who knew how much technology these people had developed? For safety's sake, it was better to send out the troops as soon as possible. All right, gather the others. We will depart today. Although it was quick, it took them a whole hour to gather everyone. Thea naturally retreated behind the scenes and left all the work to Director Gordon, who was not afraid of death or exposing his identity. It was impossible to hide such a large-scale mobilization from the enemy, and Thea did not intend to hide it either. There was no brilliant plan, just relying on the number of people to push through the enemy. There were more than 300 fully armed official police officers, more than 180 veterans and a few enthusiastic citizens, and finally, there were 10 elite agents from the Heaven's Eye Society. The director looked at the crowd below him and felt a little excited. However, he knew that this was not the right time. After a few simple words of encouragement, he waved his hand and set off. More than 500 people sat in a total of 30 vehicles. The Heaven's Eye Society's military helicopters were in the air preparing for the enemy's possible attack. Thea carried the skateboard and did not participate in the observation. Instead, she stayed in the command vehicle and discussed the attack route with a few people. There was no other way. There were too many small rooms in the lunatic asylum, and it was not easy to use the skateboard indoors. In such a large-scale battle with nearly 1,000 people on both sides, there was not much room for her to use. Sia's position was to snipe the boss with a name and leave the rest of the soldiers to the main force. We should split up and enter the asylum from 3 directions. Barbara was obviously much more energetic and began to express her brilliant ideas again. Thea did not bother to answer her. Why did she think that she was so smart? She did not like her. No, we don't know the terrain. If we split up, the enemy will take us down one by one. The only person present who could ignore her and had considerable experience in commanding battles was Lara, the senior commander of the Heaven's Eye Society. Catwoman was not optimistic about the idea of splitting up. If anyone ran into Mr. Freeze, they would die without the support of Firefly. Thea was not that afraid of Mr. Freeze. She saw him play with a drone the other day. Something seemed wrong. When he played with a drone, his movements were very slow. She did not know if it was a problem with his body, but his reflexes were so bad that it was even worse than a normal person's. The speed of the freezing air from the gun was also not fast. With her own reflexes, She could have stabbed the arrow into his face the moment he raised his hand. However, she did not know how strong the defense of his helmet was. Moreover, Catwoman found Firefly and said that she would take care of everything, so Thea did not say anything. "Stop arguing. The enemy has already discovered us. Let's go in through the front door." Director Gordon arranged the retreat. If the situation is not good, we have to make sure that the main force can retreat relatively intact. Chapter 92. Barbara was a little annoyed by her act of thinking of retreating before the battle even started, but for various reasons, she forced herself to hold it in. Gordon and Lara, who came from the military, did not think that there was anything wrong with it, so they quickly went to arrange the mission. Perhaps it was because Arkham was preparing for a civil war. Their convoy was not attacked. This meant that Thea's plan to use the military helicopters to kill a wave of enemies was dashed. When they reached the door, Lara was about to order the helicopters to return, but Thea thought it would be a waste to send the heavy firepower back just like that. "Why don't we give that door a shot?" Thea pointed at the rusted door. If it was not for the timing, she would have gone up to take a picture. This place was too famous, it would be a waste not to do something. Lara thought that she was being childish, different from her usual calm self. However, after thinking about it, blowing up the door would make it easier for them to retreat. She picked up the pager to contact the operator on the helicopter. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 anti-tank missiles accurately exploded on the iron gate. The iron door was already rusted beyond recognition. Even an adult would be able to break it with an axe, much less such a powerful missile. After a loud crash, the group waited for the smoke to disperse. They did not get out of their vehicles and drove straight into the famous Gotham. Go, go, go! The officers jumped out of their vehicles and entered Arkham in a line. The formation was split into 3 parts. Leading the way was Gordon and the 200 officers. Barbara and Robin volunteered to protect the old director. The middle part was Lara and Catwoman, leading the agents and more than 100 hot-blooded veterans. Initially, Firefly wanted to follow Catwoman, but Thea was worried about her. What if she was a spy sent by the enemy? Furthermore, she was carrying such a large canister. She should have hidden it. If Thea was the enemy, she could have fired an arrow at the canister from afar. Half of the 500 people would be wiped out. Thea used the excuse that she was a ranged attacker to protect the escape route and dragged Firefly and the rest of the officers to the back. She felt that it was very likely that the enemy would throw a boulder or something to cut off the team when they were halfway through and then destroy them separately. Therefore, she walked very carefully. From time to time, she would pay attention to the top of everyone's heads. She was afraid that if she heard a whistle, arrows would rain down on everyone on this path. However, even after everyone had entered the mental hospital, this scene did not happen. This made her feel a little uncomfortable. Was she too sinister, or was the enemy too stupid? These people probably didn't intend to ambush him at all, right? Indeed, Arkham had no intention of ambushing them. Not long after, Thea noticed that the troops in front had stopped moving. She leaped onto a nearby table and looked into the distance. Both parties were now in an indoor gym. It was said that it was built with funds from the mental hospital's health committee. The venue was very large, but there were not many facilities around it. The seats on the stands on all sides were also seriously damaged. Thea pushed through the crowd and walked to the front of the team. The enemies in front of her were divided into 2 groups. On the left was the old acquaintance Scarecrow's elite team. They were still wearing their old American military uniforms and were extremely well equipped. However, there were not many of them, only less than 30 people. Behind this group of people stood armed gangsters in all kinds of clothes and equipment. On the right was a short and fat man in a suit with an umbrella. Thea recognized such a unique guy. This must be Penguin. She heard that he had many lethal weapons hidden in his umbrella. Thea was a little dismissive. Seeing that he was lame, there was a limit to how strong he could be in an open battle like this. Penguin was followed by a large group of gangsters in black suits. There were at least 200 of them. All of them were armed with pistols, and a few of them were even armed with automatic weapons. Next, they entered the stage where they were called teachers in ancient times and mathematics in modern times. The righteous side was definitely the veteran Gordon. Thea did not want to be in the limelight, but in reality she was a target. She still cherished her life. The villain was Penguin. Perhaps because Scarecrow's underlings had been killed by Thea, He did not have the right to speak. Even though his expression was still a little gloomy, the former Gotham professor and now Scarecrow had tacitly accepted the fact that they were led by Penguin. "Hey Jim, old friend." Penguin greeted with a fake smile. "Oswald, long time no see." Gordon replied solemnly. After the two greeted each other, they entered the stage where they were defending themselves. They both treated themselves as the victims. One side said, "You must release all the captives, put down your weapons and surrender immediately." The other side said, "Arkham has been the territory of the Gotham gang since ancient times. You have no right to interfere with what we do." They both knew that the other side would not admit defeat so easily, but the two had no choice but to finish the process. Thea was too lazy to listen to their nonsense. She whispered into their earphones, "Be careful. The enemy's elites have not appeared yet. Be careful in case they launch a sneak attack." The few of them understood this. Scarecrow studied for his master's and doctorate at Gotham University. After that, he stayed in the university to teach and was promoted to a professor. This guy probably did not even know where to go after leaving Gotham. He was as thin as a twig, and without his poisonous gas, his combat ability was not even 5. Everyone said that Penguin was good at fighting, but Thea looked at his small body and lame leg. She really did not think that he was that good. The enemy's capable fighters were obviously hiding. If they were not planning a sneak attack, what else could they be doing? Especially when there was an unscientific guy like Mr. Freeze hiding. Even Thea felt that it was a little troublesome. She kept looking around. Soon, the leaders of both sides finished their briefing and returned to their respective camps. Almost at the same time, they shouted, "Fire!" Bang! Bang! Gunshots fell on the heads of both sides like continuous raindrops. Thea had already found cover. She hid in a corner and observed the situation. She fired a few shots from time to time. Yes, her marksmanship was not bad. After practicing archery for so long, her long-range specialization was very high. Although she could not say that she could fire 100 shots, she was at the level of an elite. She turned around and was about to call her teammates, but what she saw almost made her nose crooked. She saw Catwoman and Robin at the side. The two of them were looking around with sticks in their hands. This group of people was too inexperienced in group battles. At the very least, they should be armed with a gun to boost their morale. Barbara was very good at this. She knew that she had to bring a gun when she came out to kill and set fire. Even though she didn't hit many enemies, she didn't stop firing. "Thea, should we use magnetic arrows?" Felicity, who was hiding in the camp, looked at the live broadcast and suggested. Thea observed the situation and shook her head. "No need for now. We have the advantage. The veterans are very strong. Those gang members are no match for them." Just when she thought that her side had the upper hand and was about to call a few of her friends to join the battle to increase the victory. "I am Azrael, the Angel of Death." A tall and thin man wearing a red and black leather jacket and a hood with a long sword in his hand rushed into the line of police officers like a whirlwind. He slashed horizontally and vertically, and with a raise of his hand he killed 3 police officers. Chapter 93. The tall and skinny man was surrounded by enemies alone, but he was not afraid at all. He slashed left and right with his sword, instantly killing 2 police officers and cutting off the wrist of a veteran. Thea saw that the few of them did not react, and she was a little far away, so she could only aim at the fierce man with her bow. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 arrows were aimed at the man's face and shoulder. The guy who called himself the Angel of Death was really good. He kicked the police officer beside him and used the reaction force to dodge Thea's 2 arrows. This was the first time in Thea's career that an official enemy could dodge her arrows. Although her archery skills were only SOSO, this person's reaction speed was much faster than an ordinary elite. "Who is this person?" Thea quickly asked her companions, implying that if they had a strategy, they should quickly read it out. "He is the former mayor of Gotham, Theo Galvin. However, this person should have died many years ago. If I'm not mistaken, he is a clone left behind." Gordon, who was holding a pistol at the back, knew that the young people did not know who he was, so he quickly introduced him. Oh, Thea let out a long "oh." When she first heard that he was the mayor, she was shocked. Were all mayors so fierce? Did they mean that it was impossible to survive without a similar level of martial arts? In just a short while, this person's clothes were red from killing. From the side of his hood, she could see that he had an old face and a short, needle-like beard. Every time he killed an enemy, he would roar. The surrounding police officers were shocked by his bravery and unconsciously opened up an empty space for him. However, he did not let them go. His footsteps constantly moved, chasing after the slowest people and slashing at them. Thea carefully observed him. This person's martial arts were very high, especially his fearless aura. The clothes on his body should have a certain degree of bulletproof effect. The police officers and veterans constantly fired at him, but he only dodged the fatal parts. When the other bullets hit him, it was as if he had no reaction. It seemed that she could only save the situation. Robin and the others had already found their own opponents, and they might not be able to beat this guy. She sighed. She knew that once she revealed her skills, her happy days as a bystander would be over. Get out of the way. Thea yelled at the crowd. Since it was a clone, it should be fine to kill it, right? Of course, she wouldn't rush forward in a hurry. Taking advantage of the fact that there was still some distance between them, she used her rapid-fire technique. She pulled out 3 arrows at a time and changed her angle of attack from time to time. At the same time, she moved quickly towards the Angel of Death. Pa! Pa! This clone of the former mayor had an unusually sharp intuition for danger. Even though Thea was constantly changing her position, he could still react and either slash with his sword or dodge to the side, causing Thea's first 6 arrows to miss. Seeing his stance, Thea knew that she would not be able to take him down using normal means. She took out the bat darts that she had taken from Barbara. Many members of the bat family had used these darts before. However, the weight of each dart was different depending on the strength of the individual. Thea was now using Barbara's bat darts. The size and weight were quite suitable. She first threw out a dart, then flew up and shot another arrow at the back of the Angel of Death's head. The darts were light, and Thea had little strength. Although she shot first, due to the acceleration of the bowstring, the 2 darts almost arrived in front of the enemy at the same time. The Angel of Death knew that he had no time to dodge. He could only choose the lesser of 2 evils. If the arrow hit the back of his head, he would not be able to survive. He swung his sword to break the arrow and at the same time, tried to dodge the dart. However, Thea had calculated the angle, so how could he dodge it so easily? Poof! The sharp bat dart pierced his left arm, and the leather clothes on his body did not help at all. Clang! He pulled out the dart and glared at Thea fiercely. You are guilty. Thea almost laughed. Do you think you are acting in a hot-blooded anime? You are really into the role. At this time, the distance between the two was only 5 meters. She put away the bow and arrow, pulled out the katana and dagger that she had not used for a long time, and attacked quickly. She had seen this guy's swordsmanship before. It had some shadow of the European palace swordsmanship, mixed with many modern fencing techniques. The long sword in his hand was not a 2-handed sword commonly used on the battlefield. Instead, it was more like a combination of a Swiss longsword and an Italian longsword. The blade was less than 1 meter long, and the handle was inlaid with many gorgeous patterns. The scabbard that hung diagonally was also decorated with shiny jewelry. If this guy was not showing off, it meant that this was a famous sword. Whether it was a famous sword or not, she would know after trying it out. Many famous swords were not as sharp as weapons made of modern alloy steel. The katana and dagger in Thea's hand were made of special steel. In order to make these 2 weapons, they were approved by Moira and used rare metals. Thea took advantage of his injured left arm and hurriedly attacked. The dagger in her left hand slashed his cheek from bottom to top. When he retreated to dodge, the katana in her right hand slashed straight at his abdomen with an Iato slash. The Angel of Death held the sword with both hands and stabbed it straight into the ground. On one hand he blocked Thea's horizontal cut, and on the other hand he stopped his rapid retreat. Thea really did not expect this strange move. When the 2 swords collided, she only felt the katana in her hand inexplicably stagnate. Thea knew that she was in trouble. The opponent was indeed holding a sword, but in such a passive way, the katana in her hand had already become chipped. Although the situation was a little unfavorable, Thea felt more and more that her fighting spirit was high, and the blood in her body was boiling unconsciously. She held the dagger in her hand and put the main direction of attack on the katana in her right hand. She was weak, and the Japanese style of swordsmanship was not suitable for her. So she changed to Wing Chun 8 chops. Hachi 8 chops should be suitable for short swords, but now there was no condition. Thea could also barely use the katana. Hachi 8 chops was completely opposite to Wing Chun 4 chops. Boxing pursued to hit the enemy, and the target was the person. Hachi 8 chops was another way. Its target was the opponent's weapon, which was very suitable for this situation. Thea then used the advantage of her slightly longer weapon to attack the opponent's wrist and fingers. Picking, stabbing, cutting, and chopping, the essence of Hachi 8 chops was vividly displayed. The Angel of Death had really never seen this kind of move. He was very aggrieved and anxious. The unfavorable situation made his mind begin to become anxious, and he kept shouting, "Sinner! You will be purified by the fire of heaven. Watch my judgment. Crusader strike." As the Angel of Death kept shouting, Thea was a little confused. What was the meaning of this guy? Why was he shouting the name of the move while fighting? He had taken off his hood, and his hair was disheveled, and he was spitting at her like a madman. This idiot really had the characteristics of Gotham. Chapter 94. Even though the Angel of Death's roar was deafening, Judgment was just a vertical slash from head to toe, and Cross Army Strike was just a horizontal slash with a diagonal slash. There were no exaggerated scenes like the Angel of Death's golden aura. Thea could only make a stupid judgment about his bad habits. Is this the side effect of cloning, or is this guy really that Shinibu? Thea did not have the time now, otherwise she would definitely ask him about it. But regardless of whether this person was mentally ill or not, his attack power was undeniable. He didn't have any golden sparkle, but his long sword was constantly slashing left and right, which made Sia, who was exhausted from dealing with him, very vexed. Because he did not defend himself at all, the two fought for 3 minutes and Thea had already slashed him twice with the long sword in her hand. In addition to the dart that hit him previously, blood was gushing out of his body. However, he did not seem to feel it as he continued to attack tirelessly. King Hell. Thea, who thought of herself as an honest little beauty, was so anxious that she wanted to curse. If this guy was a normal person, she would have taken him down long ago. His brain was not working well, and he would be distracted intermittently, which led to a lot of flaws in his moves. However, because he was not afraid of death, he was able to equalize the situation. The person behind the cloning of the Angel of Death must have noticed that there was something wrong with his brain, so he artificially lowered his neurologic transmission and compensated for his insanity with madness. How amazing! If Thea did not care about her own injuries, she could have taken him down. However, she would have to be stupid to trade injuries with the clone. It was not worth it. After Thea slashed him from the side again, the Angel of Death, who had lost too much blood, was in a daze. His attacks weakened a little, and the volume of his shouts was also much lower. Thank goodness you're finally not shouting so loudly. You've made Sia so annoyed that I feel like I'm bullying a handicapped person. It was a mistake for me to get excited when I saw him. Next time I'll just leave this job to Robin and the others. I won't fight him even if I'm beaten to death. It's too annoying. Thinking of Robin, Thea wondered how the fight was going. She forced the Angel of Death back with 2 moves and looked at the situation. Under the circumstances, both sides still had the advantage of having 6 on their side and 4 on the other side. The gangsters were being beaten back by the joint forces of the police officers and veterans. It was only a matter of time before they won. However, the fight between the heroes and the villains wasn't so beautiful. Without Batman, his team's combat power was subconsciously weakened. Furthermore, Thea was entangled with this lunatic. The situation wasn't as expected. Catwoman was dealing with the Penguin Man and a burly man wearing a pig mask. Could only be said that it was a draw. On the other side, Barbara was surrounded by 6 to 7 elite scarecrows. The few of them were in full swing, and Barbara was using all her firepower. Her whip danced wildly and darts flew everywhere, accompanied by her pistol firing from time to time. Although she had the advantage, her stamina was greatly depleted. The duel between Firefly and Mr. Freeze that he had imagined did not happen. That was good news. These 2 guys were too powerful for normal people. Where's Robin? Thea looked around the arena. Not there. She didn't believe it and looked around again. Finally, she found Robin in the stands far away from her. surrounded by two people. Both of them were wearing black suits and owl masks. One of them was holding a pair of rods, and the other was holding a long sword. The two of them were very skilled and coordinated very well. They were probably not weaker than Robin in a one-on-one. Now, the two of them were working together to beat Robin to the point that he could only parry and not fight back. What was this? The claws of the Court of Owls. Thea was a little shocked this time. This was Gotham's hidden boss. It wasn't just one or two people. This group of people was the union of the oldest families in Gotham. They had been silently watching this city for 200 years. How did they provoke this group of people? He and the others still didn't have enough information. If it was the Owl Court that was going against them, everything would make sense. They had broken into the camp without anyone noticing, conducted human experiments and made clones. They had enough influence to recruit these unruly villains. Thea had a bad feeling in her heart. This operation was most likely going to fail. The enemy definitely didn't gather so many villains for her to kill them all at once. They must be hiding something. She silently thought about what the enemy was going to do to break out of this situation. No matter what, she and the others had the advantage. Even if the heroes were no match for them, as long as they could hold back a few of the enemies who could fight, the villains could only wait for death when the main force finished the battle. It was useless against hundreds of guns. Just as she was thinking hard, her hand movements naturally decreased a little. The crazy angel of death charged forward again with a mouthful of nonsense. Thea was really sick of this dogskin plaster, but she couldn't not fight. She could only stop thinking and continue to play the game of dodging 10 slashes. When Thea blocked another slash from the angel of death, she felt that the katana in her hand couldn't take the burden anymore. It was seriously damaged from multiple slashes and was about to break. Optimistically, she estimated that she could only slash twice more. This special alloy weapon that had accompanied her for more than a year would have to say goodbye to it. F***CK. I've been helping to fight the monster and my equipment is about to break. Can Gotham compensate me? Is it too late for me to buy insurance now? While she was pondering whether she should grab a baton from the officer next to her and use it to deal with the situation, a gangster with a common face under the Penguin Gang saw Sia constantly retreating into the crowd. He thought that she was exhausted and was about to lose, so he hurriedly rushed up with a dagger in his hand, ready to assist her. Thea was stunned by the sudden appearance of this guy. She wanted to say that this was against the rules of the underworld, but when she saw his expression as if he was bullying a pushover, she thought, "Are you sure you want me? Do you think I'm Garfield if the tiger doesn't roar? Besides, what kind of eyes do you have? Do you think that the blood on that lunatic is all mine?" Actually, she had wrongly accused him. He was a core member of the underworld and wasn't blind. The main thing was that Thea was wearing a red dress and couldn't tell if she was bleeding or not. Seeing the ferocious attacks of the Angel of Death, he would naturally think that she was at a disadvantage. She tilted her body slightly and dodged the dagger. It would be a waste not to use such a good helper. Thea grabbed his wrist and pulled him towards her. At the same time, she tripped him lightly. In a normal fight, one should let go and let the opponent touch the ground intimately, but Thea didn't do that. She grabbed the opponent's arm and spun quickly, using the strong inertia to throw the person towards the Angel of Death. Everyone should stay away from lunatics. The Angel of Death saw a figure running towards him. Without thinking, he stabbed the person's chest. Chapter 95. Thea had noticed this problem before. Why did this idiot called Death Angel jump into the crowd without saying a word? A more scientific explanation was that this guy had behavioral and cognitive impairments, or simply put, this guy did not recognize people. Many huskies that were raised for a short period of time also had this problem. They would run away in the blink of an eye after letting go of the leash. In the eyes of huskies, everyone looked the same. This was the problem with this guy who had been fighting with Sia for a long time. The breeder, no, the mastermind behind this was most likely also cloned to save time. He only copied the brain's memory, and did not imbue it with much logical analysis ability. He looked fierce from afar, but he could not do anything. As a bodyguard, he might go berserk and hack his employer to death after 5 minutes. If he chased after the target for half an hour, he might lose contact because he could not find the way. The mastermind must have tried a lot of methods before finally using this guy as a disposable item. If he was still in the enemy's crowd, he could kill as much as he wanted. If he could survive, he would be lucky. If he died, it would not be a pity. This was the problem now. Under the huge inertia, the gangster could not stop at all. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws and rushed towards Death Angel. Puff! Death Angel, who only had instincts in his mind, did not realize that the guy who rushed over was one of his own. Perhaps he did not even have the concept of allies. He neatly stabbed his sword into the guy's chest. Just as he was about to pull out the sword, Thea had already circled around to the side. This opportunity was simply a godsend. This guy's sword was so sharp that he could not let him hold it anymore. Thea withdrew her dagger and held it with both hands. She used the Iato slash and slashed his forearm from top to bottom. Although Death Angel's brain was not very good and lacked many applications, he still had basic combat awareness. In the face of such a fierce attack, if he continued to insist on pulling out his sword, his arm would be cut off directly. Even if he pulled out his sword quickly, it would be too late. The human body was not a piece of paper. There was a certain amount of resistance. Although his sword could cut through iron like it was mud, there was still resistance. In addition, when a person was injured, it would automatically close the wound. The Angel of Death exerted a little force, but he knew that he could not pull out his sword in such a short time. He could only quickly let go of his sword and retreat, avoiding Thea's powerful strike. This guy is finally empty-handed. Thea didn't have the spirit of a fair duel. She didn't have the brainless idea of, if you don't have your weapon, I'll throw my weapon away and we'll continue training together. She was only thinking about how to kill this guy quickly and safely. Without his sword, the Angel of Death was no different from a toothless tiger. Thea no longer had any scruples. Although his martial arts were not bad, it depended on who he was compared to. Compared to Chief Gordon, he was pretty good, but in the eyes of Thea, he was really weak. The two of them fought with speed and quickly exchanged 7 or 8 moves. Thea used her superb fighting experience and quickly found 3 flaws in his movements. She successfully made 2 cuts on his body. As blood continued to flow out, his speed slowed down visibly. His chattering mouth also became gasping for breath. After all, he was a clone, not a robot. He had flesh and blood. In just a few minutes, he was slashed by Thea into a bloody gourd. He didn't faint after losing so much blood. This cloning technology was quite impressive. Thea knew that the opportunity to win was right in front of her. She faked a move with the dagger in her left hand. When the Angel of Death raised his arm to parry, her right hand pierced the Angel of Death's chest. The violent outflow of blood accelerated his physical exhaustion. At this time, his reaction speed was much slower than before. He vaguely saw Thea's stab and tried his best to move his body to the side, trying to avoid this fatal strike. Poof! The dagger fiercely pierced his right rib. His brain wasn't clear. He only knew that he couldn't let the enemy continue to attack. Before she could pull out her dagger, a hand grabbed her dagger and looked at Thea fiercely. Yo, are you pretending to be a hero? Usually, grabbing the enemy's weapon and then killing them is something that the protagonists do. The person who cloned you was afraid that you had nothing to do every day, so he showed you cartoons to watch, right? I really have to hand it to you. After fighting for so long, you don't even know how many weapons I have? Thea ignored his wide-open eyes. Under his surprised gaze, her left hand dexterously slashed the dagger across his throat. The ferocious look in her eyes was gradually replaced by confusion. She covered her throat with her hands, and dark red blood kept spurting out. She made some incomprehensible sounds, and the tall figure of the Angel of Death slowly fell to the ground. I don't know if this person will give me an honorable kill. Is a clone considered a person? Did I violate the principle of not killing? If I meet Superman later, I have to discuss with him. Thea threw away half of the katana that had accompanied her for more than a year. The other half of the katana was left on the Angel of Death. This katana was unexpectedly broken in the final struggle. Although her left hand and right hand moved in slow motion and then replayed in slow motion to kill the enemy, she was actually also a victim. Lowering her head to pick up the sword, Thea swore to God that she was absolutely not greedy for this sharp weapon. She just wanted to go back and analyze the composition of this sword for scientific research. That's all. She then looked at the scabbard at the waist of the corpse. This scabbard also had a lot of historical value. It seemed to be very gorgeous. There were so many Yakuza members here. They definitely didn't know how to protect cultural relics in daily care. It seemed that this mission was also hers. She reluctantly took it back for research. After cutting off the rope around the corpse's waist, Thea took the scabbard in her hand. Looking at the color, it matched her crimson battle suit. It was not suitable to give it to anyone in this chaotic situation. She casually inserted it into her quiver. She had emptied a quiver before, so it was just right to store this thing. She observed the situation on the battlefield. Barbara was using all her strength to whip a few Yakuza members. It seemed that she had some kind of attribute boost. She was just short of shouting something like a queen. Robin was still the same. He was being hit by two extremely skilled claw wheels. He could only barely resist. Although it was serious, it wasn't dangerous. Plus, he was a little far from the battlefield. Thea couldn't reach him even if she wanted to help. This was also good. She could release Catwoman's combat power first. Victory was right in front of her eyes. Thea took out an arrow and aimed at the penguin guy who was holding a broken umbrella and happily fighting with Catwoman. This guy was also a character. The key was that he had the most subordinates. As long as he died, his subordinates' morale would immediately plummet. In this way, her side would win. Chapter 96. She adjusted her breathing and pulled the bowstring to the maximum. Then she aimed at the penguin man's distinctive sharp nose and shot an arrow. The arrow was like a meteor chasing after the moon. It was extremely fast and landed accurately. If nothing went wrong, the sharp arrow would open up a large hole in the penguin man's face. His trusted subordinates would happily attend their boss's memorial service tomorrow, and a new leader would be chosen the day after tomorrow. However, when the arrow was less than 20 centimeters away from his ugly face, a figure flashed past from the side. A dark green glove quickly grabbed the arrow. It wasn't surprising that her arrow was blocked. After all, her archery skills weren't at the peak yet. The lunatic Death Angel could also block arrows, but catching an arrow flying at high speed with her bare hands wasn't something an ordinary person could do. People with great strength and dynamic vision could do it, but the person in front of him was obviously not that type of person. She was familiar with his archery skills, and she was using the special skill of the ninja masters. He also knew this skill, but he didn't expect that he would encounter a woman who used it against him today, because he didn't have the chance to use it. Talia. Thea looked at the woman not far away in a low voice. Who are you? Talia Al Ghul was wearing a dark green leather jacket. She carried a bow on her back, held a recurved bow, and had a long sword at her waist. She looked at Thea and wondered who this person was. Her martial arts and archery skills were obviously passed down from the ninja master. Could she be from the Alliance? Thea didn't know how to answer her question. There was a complicated story behind this, so she couldn't go into too much detail. Besides, she didn't plan to tell the story in front of so many people. Looking at her face, which was full of mixed blood characteristics, different from the fair skin of European and American people, there were some characteristics of the Arab world and East Asian people. Her thick black hair set off her amber eyes, exuding a strange and dangerous charm. Beat me first. Thea also wanted to see how different she was from the daughter of the ninja master, the future leader of the Green Arrow. She quickly drew an arrow and shot it at Talia. You still need to practice your archery skills. Talia skillfully swatted away the arrow with her bow. Although she spoke contemptuously, her movements were not slow either. She drew her bow at the same speed as Thea and deflected an arrow. However, under Thea's powerful perception, this arrow was as eye-catching as the sun in the sky. She gently moved 2 steps to the left to avoid the arrow's trajectory, while continuing to shoot back at Talia. Following that, the two of them continued to draw their bows as if they were performing a show. Arrows of almost the same size and weight constantly intersected in the air. While the two of them were shooting at each other, they also needed to dodge each other's arrows. Occasionally, they would even use the classic scene of 2 arrows colliding in the air. For a while, the two of them shot out 20 arrows from their quivers, but neither of them could do anything to the other. Talia's archery skills were indeed superb, but Thea's powerful perception could also make up for her lack of archery skills. After the intense rapid shooting, it consumed a lot of stamina and mental strength. The two of them did not have outstanding physiques, so they both stopped attacking at the same time. They adjusted their breathing and stared at each other, preparing for the next round of competition. At this point, Talia was completely sure that the person opposite her was using the archery skills of a ninja master. After all, Old Ma was not a master of his generation and did not have the ability to innovate. He taught Thea exactly how others taught him, and this archery style was displayed in front of Talia. If she could not see this, it would only mean that she was blind. After careful observation, looking at the opponent's various movements, strength, speed, and other data, she could still determine that the opponent was a woman, and a young woman at that. Talia pondered for a while. Who could it be? Her first thought was her sister, Nissa El Ghul. She had left Nandarbart for many years, and did not know what level her sister's martial arts had reached. However, she felt that it should be about the same level as the person in front of her. Moreover, the two of them were very similar in age. There was a slight age gap between the two sisters, and their relationship was not good. She had also left home early with her child, so they were not close. Did her sister know that she had appeared in Gotham and rushed over to deal with her? Was her father, the ninja master, also nearby? She felt a little uneasy and ordered her subordinates to continue lying in ambush and not reveal themselves. Fortunately, Thea could not read minds. Otherwise, if she knew that she had mistaken her for her sister, she would definitely shout, "What kind of taste do you have? No matter if it's my figure or my looks, I'm much better than your sister." At this time, Thea was a little troubled. This person was the mother of Batman's son. It was not appropriate for her to fight. Furthermore, she would be an important person to enlighten Oliver in the future. Without her guidance, there would be no Green Arrow. She did not want to ruin this important opportunity for her brother. Furthermore, the interpersonal relationships in this world were very strange. In the future, Green Arrow would marry Nissa. Regardless of whether they were husband and wife in name, she was Green Arrow's sister, and Talia was Nissa's sister. The two of them were very cliché relatives. They could pretend that they did not know each other and eat together during Chinese New Year. Furthermore, since she had appeared here, would Bane be far away? Thea did not know how to fight this guy whose strength was measured in tons. Even an Iron Man would not be able to withstand a fist the size of a casserole combined with 2 tons of strength. Talia was afraid that the ninja master would jump out to deal with her, and Thea was also afraid that Bane would come out from the bushes. The two of them were afraid of both sides, so they both retreated to their respective groups. "Director Gordon, how's the situation on your side?" Thea connected to the headset and asked about the situation on her side. "It's going well, but these people are resisting very tenaciously. To be honest, I think they are plotting something." The old director's gunshots were endless, and it sounded like they were in Afghanistan. He was not the only one who felt that there was a conspiracy. Thea also had a bad feeling. With Alcourt, Talia, and Bane hiding somewhere, they were at a disadvantage in terms of high-end combat power. Thea made a prompt decision and gave the order to retreat. "Director, go to the back and arrange for backup. We will slowly retreat from the asylum. Agent Lara, order your snipers to shoot and bring Robin back. Catwoman Barbara, prepare your smoke grenades. Also, Catwoman, ask Firefly to help cover the retreat." Firefly did not enter their private channel. On one hand, Thea was worried about her. On the other hand, she was not very fond of Batman's team. Following Chief Gordon's order in the police channel, the large force began to consciously shrink their formation. Bang! Bang! 2 sniper shots rang out. The 2 sharp claw members besieging Robin had very high intuition. The moment the bullets got close to them, they retreated and dodged, allowing Robin to smoothly withdraw to the large force. Chapter 97. Putting aside Robin's skills for the time being, his tenacity was indeed commendable. Anyway, Sia saw him running back to the crowd in a sorry state. His face was bruised and swollen, and there were 2 big holes in his battle suit. Blood seeped out from his clothes from time to time. He was seriously injured, but he still held on and did not call for backup. He was really a tough guy. "My pager is broken. Thank God you guys helped me." Thea knew she had misinterpreted Robin's expression when he opened his mouth. However, she did not laugh at him when she thought about how powerful his claws were. Instead, she ordered him to retreat to the back of the group. Nominally it was to hold the line, but in reality it was to let him rest. "Thea, be careful. There's a lot of thermal activity in the side room. There's also a small amount of radiation." Thea was about to order the rest to throw a smoke grenade when Felicity reminded her through her earpiece. It was not surprising that the enemy had set up an ambush, but how did the radiation come out? Just as she was thinking, the metal door on the right side of the gym was slammed open. A few burly men rushed out. She could not tell how many of them there were, but as the door was pulled down by the leader, more and more people rushed out from the door. Oh, this must be the enhancer that Chief Gordon mentioned before. To be able to tear down such a heavy iron door like tearing a piece of paper, although his strength was not as strong as Baines, who was measured in tons, he was still considered Hercules. Most of the people who rushed out were wearing the clothes of ordinary citizens, but their faces were anything but ordinary. Some of them had blood flowing from the corners of their eyes, some had veins on their faces and necks that were throbbing, and some even had horns or other unknown objects on their foreheads. These people had all kinds of strange appearances. No matter how she looked at them, they did not look like they were born naturally. There could only be one conclusion. Was this Arkham's unique biohuman experiment? She did not expect the mastermind to be so fast. They had already created so many successful products in just 3 days. To verify her guess, Thea took out an arrow and aimed it at the 2-meter-tall burly man with horns on his head that looked like a rhinoceros. Puff! The arrow went straight into the enemy's chest, but the blood that flowed out was not the usual red of an ordinary person. Instead, it had a strange purple color. The burly man was pushed back 2 steps by the kinetic energy of the arrow. With a roar, he pulled out the arrow and continued to charge towards Thea. Amazing! Thea could tell that her opponent was definitely injured. As long as he was still bleeding, it meant that he could still be killed. She continued to draw her bow. It was as if Cervantes had been reborn. She gracefully stood on the ground and shot 5 arrows at the rhino man that was charging at her. Roar! The rhinoceros man, who was running at high speed, was shot in the left eye by the 4th arrow. The 5th arrow pierced through his throat. He clutched his wound and fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Thea pursed her lips. These guys looked intimidating, but their real abilities were just some enhancements to their strength, speed, and endurance. They were the same as the Death Angel from before. They all needed to strengthen one thing, and that was their brains. He doesn't even know how to dodge an arrow. This guy might not even be as good as the Angel of Death, however. The fact that she could easily deal with them did not mean that they were weak. Even though the police officers tried their best to hold the line and used their skillful coordination to focus fire on 3 of them, more and more enemies were coming out from the side door. Chief Gordon, give the order to retreat. I'll buy you some time. Thea took out a winding arrow from her special quiver and aimed it at the metal door. She shot it at lightning speed. After observing the effect of the arrow, she did not know how strong these people were. She did not want to risk it, so she shot another arrow. Dense spiderwebs instantly covered the entire side of the wall. Since the reinforcements lacked an important organ like their brains, they could not figure out what the white spiderwebs were. They jostled and pushed each other as they tried their best to get out. However, they underestimated the resilience of the spiderwebs. The few people in front were instantly stuck to the spiderwebs. The people behind them used them as support to push the spiderwebs outwards. From an outsider's point of view, it looked like the spiderwebs were being pushed up by the reinforcements from time to time. Then the spiderwebs would fall silent and bulge out again. Thea was not very confident about her double-winding arrow. In theory, it was used to deal with normal people. Who knew if it could deal with the reinforcements? She called out to everyone. Let's retreat. The Firefly, Miss Bridget Parker, also came to Thea's side. However, her eyes were fixed on the spiderwebs not far away. She seemed to be thinking about the effects of the spiderwebs. She seemed to be eager to try it out. You take the rear. I'll cover you, Thea whispered to Miss Firefly. At the same time, she ordered her friends through the earpiece to throw smoke grenades at the enemy. According to her experiments, the Batman brand smoke grenade would produce some kind of chemical combustion when it came into contact with fire. Today was the perfect time to test out the effects. Miss Firefly did not wait for her orders. Seeing that most of the people had retreated, she opened up the nozzle of the flamethrower and fired at the Arkham Union Army. Her flame was different from the flames of everyday life. It was more like a mixture of some chemical substance and kerosene. It was fully ignited in the air, and then through the pressure nozzles in the combustion canister, It was shot at the heads of the gang members. That's a strong ability. Thea thought to herself. I'll make a note of it later. The best way to deal with her is to shoot her kerosene flamethrower from afar. Close combat is too dangerous. Or should I add fireproof paint to my clothes? I wonder how hot her flames are. I'll have to test it out next time. When Barbara and the rest saw the fire, they threw out a few smoke grenades to cover the retreat of the reinforcements. When Thea smelled something sour in the air, she knew that the fire and smoke had a strange chemical reaction. She grabbed Miss Firefly, who was having fun setting the fire. Let's retreat too. However, before the two of them could take a few steps, a bone-chilling cold came from the opposite side. The temperature in the air dropped rapidly, and the light that was distorted by the high temperature also returned to normal. Freezing. X2 Sia and Miss Firefly noticed the intruder at the same time. The two of them slowly retreated. Sia pulled out a special titanium alloy arrowhead with Teflon coating. This coating was specially used by the Quinn group for machining high-speed cutting tools. Sia used it to strengthen the armor-piercing property of the titanium alloy. Someone who had difficulty naming it simply called it armor-piercing arrow. Miss Firefly was also focused on the opposite side, and from time to time, she would spit out some kerosene to stop the enemy's advance. Let's retreat. Catwoman Barbara came to Thea's side. The girls. It was really a group of girls this time. 1, 2, 3 for a total of 4 girls. The only male, Robin, was already offline. The 4 of them relied on Miss Firefly's continuous spitting of kerosene and slowly retreated from the asylum. Chapter 98. In the distance, Mr. Freeze, who was wearing a very flashy and unique armor, smirked when he saw that they were about to retreat. He raised his frost gun and pulled the trigger. A large amount of frost mist rushed towards the girls. Not to be outdone, Miss Firefly also raised her flamethrower and shot a string of fireballs at him. The two of them did not say a word during the battle, but anyone with eyes could see that the two of them were not on good terms. It was as if there was only one of them left. The frozen mist kept colliding with the kerosene in the air. A large amount of mist turned into water in the air, and then quickly evaporated into gas. The kerosene was also constantly being consumed by the frozen air. Neither of them could do anything to the other, and the situation entered a stalemate. Can we go up and help? Barbara was quite loyal. Even though she had never spoken to Miss Firefly, she still automatically categorized her as a member of her camp. The person she asked was Thea, who was experienced in technological weapons. Thea was still very curious about this guy who used frost gas. She heard that his gun used the principle of low-temperature ammonia to cool, which was somewhat similar to her frost arrow. She used liquid nitrogen. In fact, the cooling effect of the two of them was similar. It was hard to say who was more advanced. Her nitrogen temperature was lower, so the cooling effect was stronger. However, the loss of energy in the air was greater. His ammonia could be shot after a certain reaction in the gun, so the loss of energy was relatively lower. However, he could continuously extract ammonia from the canister behind him and shoot it. Her arrows were one less arrow after another. In comparison, she was still a little inferior. However, if she was asked to carry a chemical canister to fight monsters, she would never do it. It was too dangerous. The way to deal with this guy and Miss Firefly was very simple. As long as she found their canister, she could happily go up and loot their corpses from afar. In the face of Barbara's question, Thea answered with certainty. Of course, watch me kill him. Her tone was full of confidence because she had already seen the protrusion behind the Frostman. This guy had some brains and knew to use armor to protect the gas tank. This was much better than the careless Miss Firefly beside her, who had no protection at all. Aiming at such a large target was not difficult. Thea was only worried that her arrows would not be able to penetrate the sci-fi-looking armor. The constant exchange of fire between the other two also caused some interference to her vision. Thea left the team and found a high platform with a better view. She aimed at Mr. Freeze, who was shooting at the fireflies. With a smug smile on his face, he loosened the bowstring. The Teflon-coated arrowhead barely completed its task. The 10-centimeter arrowhead only managed to pierce halfway into the armor. Thea waited for 2 seconds in worry. She only felt relieved when she saw cold air coming out from the gaps in his armor. Let's go. God knows if this guy's canister was pressurized, how much pressure was added, and if it would explode from the inside. She flew back to the girls and called out to Catwoman Barbara. Under Miss Firefly's puzzled gaze, the two of them ran out. Mr. Freeze was a little stunned when he saw the girls running away. He did not know why the girls who were on par with him wanted to run away. However, he did not think too much about it. He thought that her canister was out of gas, so he pulled the trigger and was ready to kill them. Two muffled sounds were heard. The fog that should have appeared theoretically did not appear. While he was still wondering what was wrong with his gun, a violent impact knocked him out. Thea and the girls saw that the entrance of the asylum was replaced by a huge block of ice in an instant. The ice was spreading rapidly in all directions. The four girls wished that they had more legs. They ran as fast as they could. Thea and Catwoman, who were faster, each carried Firefly with one arm. The girl's speed was slower than a normal person's, and she was carrying a canister that weighed more than 5 kilograms. If the two girls did not stop her, she would have been frozen into the ice wall. Barbara also gave her a push from the back. In the end, they managed to run out of the door with much difficulty. Thea, next time you make such a big noise, you should tell us in advance. Barbara, who was running so hard that her gallbladder almost popped out of her mouth, complained. Isn't this great? Mr. Freeze is finally out of the way. Thea felt that this guy's lethality was not in vain. Barbara and Catwoman looked at each other. Barbara, who was kind, said, Mr. Freeze's body temperature is below zero all year round because of the experiment accident. He's immune to ice. Theoretically, ice can't kill him. Immune? The two shiny words shocked Thea. Why does this guy have such an unscientific passive? Why didn't you tell me? She then turned to look at Firefly. According to the settings of some worlds, is this girl immune to fire? No wonder she's so brave to carry the canister around. There must be a reason behind it. Although she had made a mistake, Sia's character was to never admit her mistakes. She was like this in version 1.0, and she was still the same in version 2.0. Thinking about the various chemical and physical knowledge that he knew, Zhang Heng decided to give it a try. Haha, of course I know. We can't kill him this time, but he needs a lot of time to defrost. Plus, we have to recompress the gas. This will take precious time. Don't worry. Everything is under control. Thea patted her chest, which was almost sea-size, and promised the girls. Catwoman was illiterate, so she couldn't tell whether she was telling the truth or not. Barbara had a Ph.D. in library management, so it was obvious that she wasn't interested in physics or chemistry. She couldn't tell whether she was telling the truth or not. Miss Firefly had never dealt with her before. Seeing how resolute she was, Miss Firefly decided to believe her for the time being. Realizing that her acting had successfully fooled the three girls, Thea let out a long breath. She began to think about how to deal with Mr. Freeze. Since shooting the canister didn't work, what else could she do? Mr. Freeze was really powerful. Even if she used a rocket launcher to attack him, the rocket launcher would be extinguished or even completely frozen. Moreover, even if he wasn't frozen, his armor's defense was top-notch. He was almost immune to ordinary firearms. No matter how hard she thought about it, she still couldn't come up with a good idea. This guy was so hard to deal with. Sia started to worry about the current grim situation. Owl Court, Mr. Freeze, and a large number of enhanced humans created by biochemical experiments. The problems came one after another. Thea couldn't help but furrow her beautiful eyebrows. If there was no other way, he could only use the Hellfire missile. However, this was a difficult decision to make. Even if Amanda agreed, with the black woman's personality, she would still put the blame on him. This could only be used as a last resort. Chapter 99. Originally, Thea had planned to pretend to retreat to lure them out and set up an ambush, but now that Mr. Freeze had unexpectedly frozen the entire intersection, she had no choice but to give up the whole plan. Miss Firefly wanted to leave alone, but Thea dragged her into the command vehicle. This person was now a treasure. Thea could not let her go before she figured out how to deal with Mr. Freeze. Thea and Catwoman finally persuaded her to stay with them. They did not speak in the vehicle. Each of them was summarizing the gains and losses of the battle. Thea took out the sword that she had picked up for scientific research. She tapped the blade lightly, and it made a low hum. Thea could not tell what material it was made of. The blade was dark black and 85 centimeters long. Including the hilt, it was only a meter long. It was a traditional English broadsword, but the blade was thinner. It could be used to stab and cut. The Latin inscription was engraved on the hilt. The Sword of Osriel. That lunatic got his name because of this sword, right? If he was still alive, he could have changed his name. Thea held the sword in her hand and waved it gently. It was a good sword. It was neither light nor heavy. With her height and strength, it was just right for her. This was the will of God. Everyone in the car couldn't help but glance at her as she wielded her sword. Firefly and Lara, who weren't interested in cold weapons, quickly shifted their gazes. Batman's group of friends and family looked at her for a while. Is this the sword of the Angel of Death? Robin seemed to have a deep impression of this sword. However, he was too far away when he was beaten up by the two claws, so he did not see Thea's battle. He was a little confused when he saw the sword. Thea glanced at him and ignored him. He really doesn't know how to talk. What do you mean the sword of the Angel of Death? Legally speaking, emotionally speaking, this is my sword. Which side is the Angel of Death on? I don't know her at all. Just as she was about to put the sword back into the scabbard, Catwoman, who had sharp eyes, saw the gorgeous scabbard. Did you get this too? Facing Catwoman's passionate eyes, Thea subconsciously took a small step back. What's wrong? Is there something wrong with the scabbard? Catwoman only felt that the gems on the scabbard were shiny and dazzling. As someone who had been in the jewelry business for more than 10 years, she immediately judged that the gems on the scabbard were real. She wanted to turn her head away, but she couldn't control her eyes. She thought to herself, I just want to take one look, one more look, one last look. Women were similar to dragons. Thea's ostentatious display of wealth had attracted the attention of the usually indifferent Miss Firefly, not to mention the other girls. Lara glanced at him from the corner of her eyes and forced herself to calm down. Barbara was from a well-to-do family, so she was more immune to jewelry. After a bout of envy and jealousy, she turned to Robin and confided in each other. However, the other two girls, who grew up in poor families, did not have such strong willpower in the face of the temptation of these colorful stones. As the most beautiful girl in Green Arrow's movie, Felicity was a woman who changed her clothes 3 times a day and wore 1 earring a day. Relying on the fact that she was on Thea's side, she grabbed the sleeves of her battle suit and stared at her with sparkling eyes. She almost shouted, "This thing is fated to be mine." Catwoman was also a little attracted to it. She kept calculating how much money she could get if she sold the scabbard. She secretly hated the Death Angel for being so useless and not being skilled in martial arts. Such a treasure from Gotham had fallen into the hands of the people of Star City, and it was openly seized. There was no reason for her to keep it. Thea naturally wouldn't say something like, "Everyone who saw it gets a share. Come, 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 everyone take a gem." She was so poor that she didn't even have enough to eat. Whether the scabbard was for her own use or to be sold, it had nothing to do with the people of Gotham. She wouldn't give up a piece of meat that was already in her hands. In order to divert their attention, Thea wanted to ask them about their opinions on the battle today. Do you think those enhanced people are strong? Have you fought with them before? The girls, including Robin, looked at each other and shook their heads. Of course, they didn't shake their heads to show that the enhanced people weren't strong. It was just that they hadn't fought with the enhanced people before, so they couldn't make a judgment. Seeing them shake their heads, Thea knew that she had asked for nothing. Her heart sank. If there were thousands of enhanced people, she wouldn't be able to stop them. Fortunately, the experienced director, Gordon, spoke up. "I've seen them when I was young. Back then, they had all kinds of abilities. Some could cause people to age, some could control people's minds, but they all required physical contact." He pondered for a moment. "This time, I feel that they only strengthened their bodies. They didn't have any strange abilities." "Then do you know how to deal with them?" Thea was still very polite to the old man. She asked expectantly. The director was a little embarrassed. "Back then I used a stick to fight them. At that time the enhanced people were stronger than normal people, but it was limited." Thea had the urge to facepalm when she heard his words. "Look at your old arms and legs. You were so hot-tempered when you were young. You were really fierce. You didn't even have a plan. You just fought head-on. Barbara must have inherited your personality. This method was too brainless. 2 or 3 of them could fight head-on, but how could they fight hundreds of them? Thea, who prided herself on being smart, wasn't prepared to accept such a suggestion. You said that they emitted a small amount of radiation? Thea turned her head and asked her friend, Felicity. Yes, before they appeared. There was a rather strong radiation reaction. Did they use nuclear material to strengthen themselves? Thea's question could only be answered by the old director. After all, he had seen it before. Gordon, who was about to retire at the age of 60, tried his best to recall how the experiment was conducted. Actually, he did not care how the group of people were enhanced or what kind of enhancement they used. Once the case was solved, it was over. Gutan's case had never stopped. It had been more than 20 years since then, so how could he remember? He shook his head to show that he couldn't remember. Thea didn't have high hopes for the old man's memory. Even if he remembered after 20 years, he would definitely come up with something new. The memories from back then could at most be used as a reference. Fortunately, Thea had been thinking about weapons of mass destruction recently. As the pinnacle of human technology, nuclear weapons were the focus of her attention. She lowered her head and thought for a while. Later, install a Geiger counter on the drone and measure the amount of radiation there, Thea instructed Felicity. Then, she suddenly thought of something and turned to the Gotham people. You have a Geiger counter, right? What the hell? The people present were all normal citizens who changed their class to heroes. Who would have time to think about this? A few of them were confused and were about to shake their heads when Lara saved them. Our Sky's Eye Association has one. I'll ask them to get one for you. Chapter 100. Hearing that, Thea was relieved and began to focus on the discussion with Felicity. Their theory should be to use nuclear radiation to weaken the human body's self-defense mechanism, then add in various animal DNA to strengthen the surface. In fact, this kind of strengthening is very burdensome to the carrier, and the increase in strength is also very limited. Thea shared some of her thoughts based on the process of beating up the rhinoceros man. Then, as long as we remove the radiation residue on the surface of the body, theoretically, the foreign animal DNA will be gradually eliminated by the human body's own immune system, Felicity said softly with her chin in her hand. However, it was easier said than done. Removing radiation pollution was not something that could be done overnight. The 1986 Chernobyl was still standing, and 1,650 square kilometers of land was contaminated, and no one dared to go near it. The asylum did not have a pollution problem, but removing the trace elements was a big problem. She did not know if they had a ready-made reactor or if they used nuclear waste. The waste was not a big threat, but if they had a reactor with enough power, Thea would have to give up on the Arkham project. Let's go and test the value first. If the value is not high, we can try traditional rain and spraying boric acid. There was too little reference data, and Thea could only take one step at a time. However, she suddenly thought of the problem of rain, and asked the few people who were about to fall asleep, has it ever rained in Gotham? Is it cloudy all year round here? To be honest, the various nuclear waste and radiation she had been talking about were indeed a little scary. The few people in the group of relatives and friends couldn't get a word in edgewise and could only listen silently. Now that they heard her talk about the problem of rain, this problem wasn't that profound. Barbara felt that she was looking down on Gotham, a big city. No matter how bad their family was, they would not allow an outsider to criticize them. She said unhappily, "Of course it has, but there are many cloudy days throughout the year." Was that called many cloudy days? It was basically cloudy all year round. Anyway, Thea had not seen a sunny day for more than a month. Living in a dark environment for so long, not to mention the physical illness, there were also many dark thoughts in the mind, and finally there would be an opportunity to put them into action. Normal people like us commit crimes in broad daylight compared to those who commit crimes at night. Not everyone has the courage to commit crimes in broad daylight. Thea felt like she had found the cause of Gotham's illness, or rather, a part of it. At the same time, he sighed at how lucky Superman was to land in the capital of the Empire and bask in the sunlight of the capitalists. If his spaceship landed in Gotham, he would probably be poor for the rest of his life. It was unknown whether he could live to see the sun again. He vaguely remembered that in his previous life, there was a discussion on the internet about a devil being sealed deep beneath Gotham City. Therefore, even though he did not know if the cloudy days were real or not, He still had some impression of the super ferocious zombie, Solomon Grundy, sleeping in Gotham River. If he messed with the weather here, would he attract a stronger boss? Last time I was just suggesting to mobilize the masses. Didn't you see that the criminals in Gotham have started to form groups? But are you afraid? Thea felt her blood boiling. It was quite exciting. They did not know that Thea was prepared to detonate a bomb for them. Seeing that she did not say anything after asking, the group of friends and relatives did not take it to heart. They buried their heads and tidied up their equipment. They did not encounter any ambushes on the way back and returned to the campsite peacefully. The girls had to change their clothes, especially Thea, who had fought with the Angel of Death. Her body was splattered with a lot of blood. As a clean freak, she endured it for a long time. The few of them washed up and went to the meeting room. After they sat down for more than 10 minutes, Chief Gordon finally arrived. The old man did not have the time to change his clothes and wash his face. He did not rest for a moment after returning to the campsite. After calculating the casualties, he finally went to the meeting room to ask Thea for advice. 14 police officers were killed and 41 injured. 3 veterans were killed and 5 injured. Chief Gordon's heart ached. He had sacrificed many of his men. Most of them were killed in the line of duty when the reinforcements rushed out. On the other hand, the veterans were all experienced. They knew that the situation was not good and hid themselves well. The few injured were only slightly injured. Sia rubbed her eyebrows. In this battle, they had lost 1/10 of their combat strength. Although the battle results weren't great, they had at least figured out the enemy's true strength. It could be said that they had accomplished their goal. However, the reinforcements could be endlessly produced. Sooner or later, their side would be destroyed. Just as she was thinking of how to tactfully ask Chief Gordon to continue with the recruitment, the door of the meeting room was pushed open from the outside. A tall and handsome middle-aged man walked in slowly with a walking stick. Bruce! Catgirl was so excited when she saw the man that she didn't even care that she was on the other side of the table. She jumped over the long table with her arms on the table and rushed to the middle-aged man's side. She touched his face and tears flowed down uncontrollably. "Are you really Bruce?" Catwoman looked at her lover in front of her. She almost thought that she was hallucinating. Bruce Wayne's voice was as polite as usual. He hugged his lover's slender waist and said, "Yes, I'm back." Just as the two of them were about to do something like hugging and kissing after a long separation, a spoiler interrupted their reunion. "Kitten, I've brought him back for you. Where's the money we agreed on?" A graceful woman with long hair walked out from behind Bruce. Thea wanted to cover her face when she saw this scene. This person who ruined the atmosphere and ruined the background music of the couple's reunion was Thea's teacher or training partner, Big Sister Shiva. Big Sister ignored the surprised looks of the people around her. She even stretched out a hand in front of Catwoman, indicating that she should pay up quickly. She was busy. "Shiva, we've told you many times along the way. I'll pay and you'll let Selena go." Bruce was still very respectful to his savior. "No, she has to pay for her request. Besides, your company is almost gone. How can you get the money? I don't want your old house." Shiva ignored his gaze and focused on getting the money from Catwoman. Catwoman was very embarrassed. She had gone to Star City to look for Shiva with the intention of making a last-ditch effort. To be honest, she had thought that Master Bruce would not come back. He was seriously injured and had been kidnapped. So, she had promised an astronomical reward. Now that he had been rescued and had not lost an arm or a leg, it would be too embarrassing if she did not pay. Chapter 101. Catwoman glanced at her old lover. To be honest, she was a little annoyed that he came back unscathed. She couldn't even find an excuse to talk to Shiva. She pushed Master Bruce behind her and smiled helplessly as she walked to the other side with Shiva to talk about credit. Uncle Bruce was in an awkward position. It was true that he was rich, but a lot of his money was dead money. For example, Wayne Group shares, Quinn Group shares, Merlin Group shares, and even Lex Luthor's shares. According to the unwritten rules, these shares couldn't be cashed out without a valid reason. In addition, real estate around the world wasn't easy to sell. Ski resorts in Switzerland, wineries in Belgium, and so on couldn't find buyers in a short period of time. His daily income was basically invested in technological equipment. This was similar to Thea. However, his basic equipment was completed while Thea was just on the road. The daily maintenance of these equipment required a large sum of money. He was very similar to Thea. They both looked glamorous but were actually very poor. Therefore, in the face of the aggressive Madame Shiva, he could only express his moral support for his old lover's predicament. Everyone in the meeting room listened quietly to the haggling between Madame Shiva and Catwoman. "We agreed to pay in a month. You're 3 days late. You definitely can't pay in full. I haven't asked you for my travel expenses. Do you know how hard I worked to find your man? I didn't even rest when I cut my finger. Do you know?" The two women threw away their usual coldness and elegance. In this crucial moment that determined the fate of Gotham, they chattered about money, and money problems. Cough cough. Master Bruce was speechless at how they treated him like goods. He coughed twice to try to divert the attention of the people in the room. "The problem of rescuing the citizens that you talked about was very deep. Add me to the chat room and we'll continue talking." However, everyone ignored him. It was rare for them to have the opportunity to gossip. If they didn't enjoy it, the people of Gotham wouldn't die anytime soon. They didn't care about these few minutes. The people led by Thea ignored Master Bruce's expression and continued to watch the two women on the other side. Catwoman, who was in the wrong, quickly admitted defeat. She took out her phone and transferred the money. Her usually strong fingers were slightly trembling. Beep. The clear ringtone of the phone rang in the room. Shiva looked at the screen with satisfaction. "Kitten, you're quite rich. That's the down payment. Remember to transfer the money at the beginning of the next month." After saying that, Big Sister looked around and saw Sia. She waved at her and said, "I've been away from home for a long time. I don't know if my daughter misses me or not. I'm leaving now." After Miss Shiva finished speaking, she put away her phone and flung her long black hair behind her back, leaving behind a suave back view as she walked away. What did that mean? I'm not even considered a graduate yet. They didn't even give me a certificate or anything. Sia knew that she had a daughter who was said to be shockingly talented. She didn't know if it was true or not, but she was still a little reluctant to part with her elder sister whom she had been with for half a year. Most importantly, she needed someone who could fight. Why did she run away? 2 more minutes and I'll get to the point. But after thinking about it carefully, he decided to just let her go. Based on what happened to the feline girl, he knew that he couldn't afford to hire this girl who only cared about money. Old Ma probably spent a lot of money to teach him back then. "Mr. Wayne, have you recovered?" Sia hurriedly asked Batman, who was beside her. This was the strongest combat power they had at the moment. She was asking if he could fight now. Bruce was an extremely intelligent person. He immediately understood what she meant. But understanding was one thing. Objective facts on the material level could not be ignored. He raised the walking stick in his hand. "I can walk normally now." F***ck, you're funny. You mean you're still injured? Then why did you come back? Did you come back to work? Sia felt like the entire world's consciousness was laughing at her. It was not easy for her to get back 2 helpers, but one had run away, and the other had a debuff. After going around in circles, she was back to the starting point. Did she still have to rely on these people? She didn't know how much he had heard of the meeting. Thea explained it to him again. "Mr. Wayne, do you think the large-scale rainfall and neutralizing radiation will change the shallow evolution of the enhanced?" "Call me Bruce. I'll always remember Miss Thea's help to Gotham." Bruce stood up to express his gratitude. "As for your suggestion, we can do it this way. Back in the day, I developed a special type of wavelength trigger. This type of sound wave is harmless to normal people. As long as we test the data of the enhanced humans and adjust it to a specific wavelength, we will be able to emit infrasound waves that are specifically targeted at the enhanced humans. I don't know how effective it is, but I think it should be able to knock someone out." From this, one could see the value of Batman's boss. Most of his combat ability was reflected in his wisdom. It wasn't a joke for him to have self-taught himself more than 10 doctorates. No wonder the ninja master valued him so much. To be able to learn so much in such a short time, he was definitely a top talent. His idea sounded more advanced than Thea's idea of sprinkling dry ice and spraying boric acid. The two of them started a heated discussion. Felicity was a little embarrassed when she saw her idol, but when she saw how happy they were, she happily joined in the conversation. This made the rest of the people in the room suffer. Other than Catwoman, who was still thinking about how to make up for her loss, everyone else was confused. They wanted to leave, but they were afraid of the task assigned to them. They could only listen to the conversation in a daze. Batman was very happy. He had learned so much, but no one appreciated it. His only confidant was an old bastard who had lived for 800 years. Usually, he had no place to show off his knowledge. It was a very troublesome thing. Talking to these people who had graduated from a literacy class about the changes of the elements, wavelengths, and frequencies was like playing the lute to a cow. Today, he met the Star City duo and realized that the two ladies' thoughts were very clear and their reactions were very fast. Most importantly, they could understand his words. This was not easy. Batman was a little sad that he couldn't go into battle after his return. However, now that he realized that his wisdom could be put to good use, his original unhappiness turned into joy. While they were talking, he also had a good impression of Star City's education. Gotham's education standards were too low. Just look at Robin, who was about to fall asleep. Should he send him to Star City to study in the future? Robin had mentioned about going to university, and it seemed like he could do something about it. Actually, he didn't know that Thea and Felicity were self-taught and had nothing to do with Star City. Chapter 102. The next day, everyone rushed to the Gotham Meteorological Monitoring Center. This place controlled 3 nearby meteorological satellites and could monitor the changes in the nearby clouds at any time. Of course, as a big capitalist city, the monitoring center was no exception. Wayne Enterprises invested a lot of research funds into the center every year. Master Bruce still wanted to remain invisible, so the person who came forward to mediate was the old black man, Lucius. Ever since he defeated Talia at Wayne's board meeting, this black uncle, or rather the old man, had been feeling refreshed. His waist no longer hurt, and his legs were no longer sore. Wayne Enterprises' 100-story building in one breath. He still couldn't climb it. In addition, Batman had returned successfully, and the two had secretly met. Their spirits were completely different, and they even walked with the wind. When he heard that they needed to use the weather station to observe the clouds, even though he didn't know what Thea wanted to do, he personally came forward to mediate. In fact, there was nothing to talk about. Everyone in the meteorological center was given a day off, and they could use the equipment as they pleased. Thea and Master Bruce, who was disguised as a police officer, were still discussing the final plan. Ever since he heard Sia's theory about the high crime rate on cloudy days, he had to admit that Brosnan was a little touched. He was a self-taught psychologist who got a doctorate in psychology. The theory was a little shocking, but it was indeed very reasonable. It was just that he had not noticed it before. Anyway, they needed to reduce the trace amount of radiation in the air, so they had to fire a few shots. Felicity started sprinkling dry ice. Thea sat on a high chair in the weather station and ordered her number 1 follower. The drone this time was different from the small plane from before. This was a so-called civilian drone that could be equipped with missiles. The few of them felt that this blatant use of legal loopholes was great. The drone rose above the clouds and started spraying dry ice. In fact, the effect was about the same on the ground. This trip would cost millions, but Thea didn't care if she didn't pay for it. Lucius was a worker, and he didn't even bat an eyelid when tens of millions were transferred to his account. This small amount of money might seem like a lot, but when it was divided among the shareholders it wasn't much. As a collective property it was squandered just like that. This was the beauty of modern capital operations. As for who would lose and who would gain, it was hard to say. After the drone took off, Thea realized that as a minor shareholder, she had also wasted a portion of the money on this flight. She was a little depressed, but when she saw Master Bruce looking at her as if nothing had happened, she couldn't say anything. Felicity controlled the plane to circle Gotham twice and only returned to the surveillance center after all the dry ice had been sprayed. The originally thick clouds were now even darker, and the black clouds seemed to be heavy as they hovered in the sky. It seemed like it was going to rain, but it seemed like someone was pulling it back. After a full 10 minutes, the expected rain did not fall. To be honest, the strange weather in Gotham made Thea's hair stand on end. If there were such thick clouds in other places, it would be raining cats and dogs. Director, order your men to fire. Thea touched her chin and was prepared to fight to the death. If you don't rain, I won't retreat. At this time, the whole of Gotham was covered by the dark clouds. The lights in the surveillance center lit up, and some of the nearby buildings also lit up. Boom! Boom! A few shots were fired. Each rain bomb was priced at $200,000. If you asked Thea how she knew, she could have said that Gordon was signing the orders. The old director had always been a man of fairness and justice. He felt that the so-called cooperation between the police and the people should not be paid by Wayne Enterprises alone. He represented the government of Gotham and signed 5 orders in one go. In less than 10 seconds, another 1 million was fired. The original black clouds were no longer visible and were replaced by darkness. The air was filled with silence, and the few people in the surveillance center were a little nervous. Just as Thea was about to fire another 5 shots, a low rumble sounded in the air. Boom! Initially, the sound was very soft and could not be heard if one did not pay attention. Soon the sound became louder. The water vapor concentration in the air has reached 179%. Felicity had been paying attention to the various data, and when she saw the number start to increase, she immediately said, "According to the surveillance station in the western suburbs, the wind has reached level 5. A common-looking agent reported. The positive charge in the updraft has exceeded 450% of the normal value," said Master Bruce, who was disguised as a police officer. With the feedback of the various data, Thea knew that rain would definitely come. However, the clouds were still brewing, and once the rain fell, it would definitely be a storm. "Babla, turn on the announcement we recorded and play it a few more times." Thea realized that the rain would not be light, so she quickly ordered Babla, who was hugging Robin tightly. Of course, she said that she recorded it for the sake of it. Actually, Felicity followed the previous idea and edited the second episode of the mayor's announcement, calling on the citizens not to leave their homes today, and to stay at home obediently. Sometimes Thea felt that if she stayed in Gotham for a few more months, this imprisoned mayor's popularity would break through a new high, and he might even be able to be re-elected. Initially, when he heard that they did not treat the mayor as an officer, the old-fashioned Batman was against it. However, when he heard that this was not the first time, he could only agree with it. Boom! The thunderous rumble finally sounded in the sky above the ancient city. Now there was no need for them to do anything. They had already done what they needed to do, and it was believed that not many citizens would go out in this kind of weather. If there really was such a weirdo, being struck to death would only be a waste of their intelligence. The continuous rumble of thunder lasted for a full 10 minutes, and bean-sized raindrops started to fall densely on the sky above the city. The glass of the surveillance center was hit by the raindrops, and it made a loud noise. The hidden world boss that Thea was suspicious of did not jump out, proving that Gotham was not a place where the devil was sealed. It was just a cumulus cloud formed by a special terrain. She could loudly announce that this episode of Entering Gotham was a complete success, telling everyone not to be superstitious and to believe in science. She stood in front of the window and watched the raindrops hit the tempered glass, leaving streaks of stains on the glass. Of course, this was not because the cleaners in the surveillance center were lazy and did not clean the glass, but because the pollutants in the clouds were brought to the ground by the rain. Will Gotham be different tomorrow? Master Bruce stood beside her and gazed into the distance. There was a hint of worry and anticipation in his voice. It definitely will. Thea was still looking out the window and did not turn back. She was very sure of this. After all, they had spent millions. It would be ridiculous if there was no effect. After the rain, no matter how you looked at it, there would definitely be changes in the city. Chapter 103. The thunderstorm raged over Gotham for a day and a night. When the rain lessened, Thea asked the old director to shoot 2 more shots into the sky in order to disperse all the clouds. They could not waste the rest of the day. It was unlikely that the bad guys from Arkham would ambush them in a thunderstorm. A few of them went to the side to practice their martial arts, while the rest of them helped Batman make the sonic weapon. Most of the previous equipment had been taken away or destroyed by Bane after the Batcave was exposed. Fortunately, Bruce's clever brain was still around. He pulled some equipment from the Sky's Eye Society, and the few of them rolled up their sleeves and began to work. Bruce had been doing mechanical work for a long time, so his hands-on skills were not ordinary. Thea could build the magnetic skateboard with her imagination, so her mechanical skills were also very good. Felicity had been trained in Star City, so she was quite familiar with the work. She joined in midway, and the three of them were in full swing. They wore work clothes, wore glasses, had towels around their necks, and were fiddling with welding torches and sledgehammers in their hands. This scene fell into the eyes of the few people who did not know the science, and it was indescribably disharmonious. You two are one of the few billionaires of the bourgeoisie. Are you betraying the class and joining the proletariat? Do I have to give you a certificate or something on May 1st next year? Barbara felt that her dream life in the upper class should not be like this. She should keep her identity as a petty bourgeois, and not try to squeeze into the upper class. Halfway through the process, Miss Firefly, who was always quiet, joined in, and the whole process sped up greatly. It had to be said that it was a waste of her talent to be born in the United States. She was a natural-born welder, and she could control all kinds of temperature and fire to perfection. Most importantly, she was not afraid of fire. In order to maintain her beautiful face, Sia had put on 2 layers of protective gear. Master Bruce also wanted to maintain his handsome middle-aged appearance, so both of them covered themselves up tightly. However, Miss Firefly did not care about this at all. The sparks that splashed on her face were extinguished without any reaction. In addition, she was so skilled in the technique that Sia even wanted to ask if she had graduated from Lanxiang High School. Now that the equipment was equipped, the next step was the debugging phase. Just as Thea was wondering if she should go and catch an enhancer in the rain, Layla performed a meritorious service. For some reason, one of her agents picked up a broken arm from the ground when they were retreating. He wrapped it in a cloth and brought it back. When he heard that there was radiation, he was so scared that he peed his pants and quickly handed it over to Lara. Everyone gathered in the laboratory to observe the arm. In fact, when the enhancers appeared that day, the few of them did not fight with each other. Only Thea shot one down from afar. The others could only say that they saw it from afar. It was only when he saw the arm up close that he realized how dangerous it had been. "Did you fuse with an animal?" Felicity asked as she pointed at the sharp claws on her arm. "It looks like some kind of lizard," Batman, who could be used as an encyclopedia, concluded after observing for a while. The few of them were too lazy to think about what kind of animal it was. They began to measure the traces of radiation on the body, and looked for special biological wavelengths. At this stage, Thea could not help much. She could barely be considered a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, but she did not have a master's degree. She only had a vague understanding of biological genes. It seemed that she still had to study. After the Gotham incident, she had to study hard for a period of time. The Princeton Library would be her permanent residence for a period of time. Since she could not help, she would just have to learn from Professor Bruce's calculations. Regardless of whether she understood it or not, Thea recorded the process of the calculations. From time to time, she would whisper a few words to Felicity. Although this girl was a computer science major, she had dabbled in a lot of miscellaneous subjects. She could barely keep up with Batman's thoughts. The couple, Barbara, felt that Batty had won glory for Gotham this time. The Star City duo was not omniscient. Although they did not understand anything, they still accompanied him in high spirits. Ever since Shiva took away half of her life savings, Catwoman had not been in a good state of mind for the past 2 days. She stopped looking after less than 2 minutes and hid in a corner, thinking about something. Now, her man was about to be taken away, and her money was already taken away. The bitterness in her heart was indescribable. The problem was that this was not over yet. She had used half of her savings and committed crimes recently to barely make the down payment. Faced with an astronomical amount of debt, how was she going to survive in the future? Looking at the thunderstorm outside the window, she wondered if she should take advantage of the dark and windy night to go out and commit a few more crimes. However, she remembered that Bruce was already back. He had always been against her actions. Previously, he was too far away to care about her, but now that he was back, it would be too easy for her to commit crimes to ruin their relationship. Originally, Talia had been singing "Give Me an Eagle," a mighty man in Arkham. She had used all her strength to drag him to her side. If she had pushed him out, the two of them would have been done for. After thinking about it for a long time, she could not think of a solution. As for borrowing money from Thea to pay off her debt, she had no intention of doing so. Catwoman, who grew up in the slums, did not have the concept of spending money in advance. From this point of view, she was still a rather traditional person. The rain stopped at around midnight. The next morning, everyone went outside at the same time. Thea, who had recently returned to normal, came out early. She wanted to see if Gotham's feng shui could be changed. From time to time, dirty water could be seen flowing into the sewers from high to low. Thea could not figure out what the black rainwater that fell to the ground was made of. She made a mental note to ask Gordon to increase the salary of the municipal workers. The workload was huge. Fortunately, Killer Croc had been arrested. Otherwise, the dirty water would have increased his rotten aura by 2 levels. Looking at her watch, it was 5:15. All the heroes were outside. Master Bruce, who had been busy the whole night, was still in good spirits. His lips were pursed as he looked to the east. It was said that he only slept for an hour a day. Thea did not know if it was true. She would ask Catwoman about it later. "It's here." The one who shouted was Chief Gordon, who loved this piece of land to the extreme. First it was a ray, then a ray, and finally a ray of sunlight shone on this piece of land that had not seen the sun for a long time. Thea was a little dazzled by the hot sunlight. She reached out her hand to block most of her vision. Countless rays of golden light shone through the gaps between her fingers, making her whole body red. The sun slowly rose, bringing with it rays of light. It lifted the last bit of mist above Gotham. Ha 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 ha. Thea covered her face. She did not know why she wanted to laugh. She only felt that her body was filled with energy. Arkham Bane, they would all be thrown into the trash. Chapter 104. Her smile infected everyone. Barbara and the young couple hugged each other and didn't let go for a long time. Lara was also looking at the morning sun, and a sweet smile appeared on her face as she thought of someone. "Old buddy, have I really done something wrong all these years?" Bruce walked up to Gordon and asked in a low voice. It was hard to tell what kind of emotions he was feeling. Happiness, excitement, depression, and maybe all of them. The old director, who had always lacked quick wit, didn't know how to answer this question. However, after living for so long, he at least knew who this sentence was directed at. He could only vaguely say, maybe it's a matter of perspective. Women and men see things from different perspectives. The old director was afraid that it would hurt his confidence, so he racked his brains and finally came up with an excuse. He then added, "She's also young, ambitious, and sharp. It's good to be young." Bruce looked at Thea, who was standing in the distance gracefully in the morning sun. Even with his experience of seeing so many women, he couldn't help but be affected by this scene. This was no love, just pure admiration. Perhaps it was indeed a matter of different perspectives between men and women. Bruce could only tacitly accept this fact and pick up his shattered belief. Otherwise, with his psychological condition, if he was suddenly told that what he had done for so many years was meaningless, he would become evil at any time. "I have to apologize to you. You entrusted your daughter to me, but my focus was on Robin. I will pay more attention to Barbara in the future." He also wanted to see if there was such a big difference in the way men and women handled problems. It just so happened that he had 2 experimental subjects under him to test. Gordon didn't know whether to thank him or to pay more attention to his daughter. According to his selfish desires, it was best for his daughter to live a peaceful life. Frankly speaking, as a father, he wasn't happy that his daughter had embarked on the path of heroism. In the past, Babla had been slacking off, and her martial arts were sparse and mediocre, which was partly due to his indulgence. However, now that Bruce had clearly expressed that he wanted to treat his daughter with high standards, he could only smile wryly and express that he was fine with it. Besides, billionaires like them were all rushing to the top, and his daughter wasn't that delicate. It was always good to have more skills. There was no need to say anything about training. Unbeknownst to them, their father and teacher were preparing to train them fiercely. Babla and Selena were kissing passionately while facing the morning sun. Thea didn't look at the lovey-dovey couple and walked to the 2 old men. "Uncle Bruce, can your wavelength transmitter be used today?" Thea also had a headache over this title for a long time. Calling him Mr. seemed distant, but calling him by his name seemed distant, so she could only act cute and call him Uncle. As expected, this form of address gave Batman a headache. He was only in his early 30s. Was he really that old? He touched his cheeks. Recently, he had been through a lot of trouble. His mouth was full of beard, and he did look quite old. Facing a 17-year-old girl, so be it. After pondering for a moment, he said, absolutely, but the area of effect is limited. The enemy has to be within 500 meters for it to be effective. Are you going to attack today? Yeah, it's better to attack as soon as possible. Freeze hasn't fully recovered yet, so this is the best time to attack. Thea had already discussed Arkham's current situation with Bruce yesterday. Especially with the involvement of the Court of Owls, the severity of the situation had reached its peak. Even though Bruce wanted to wait for him to fully recover before taking action, every minute and second was precious. It wouldn't be surprising if the Court of Owls, the old nobles of Gotham, did something earth-shattering. They were both smart people. Without any conversation or eye contact, Bruce tacitly accepted Thea's current command. If he was healthy, the command would definitely be his. Even if Superman was in Gotham, he wouldn't have a problem with that. However, since he couldn't go to the front lines, he could only entrust Thea with full authority. Before 9 o'clock, the various police officers, volunteers, and veterans who received the call had already arrived at the scene. Those who knew each other were surprised by the sun in Gotham. Yes, the sun that could be seen everywhere in other places was a rare thing in Gotham. Even if it was sunny in the past, the sun wouldn't shine as brightly as it did today. Many people who had lived in Gotham their whole lives found it hard to adjust to the sun when they woke up. All the sunglasses in the convenience stores in the city were sold out. All the sunglasses manufacturers in America were awakened by the calls from their distributors. They worked overtime to stop the shortage of sunglasses. After that, they held meetings to find out what the problem was, whether it was the Korean Missile Crisis or the sudden change in the situation in the Middle East. Uncle Batman didn't slack off in the morning either. He analyzed the Scarecrow's poisonous gas sample that Thea brought back last time and made a targeted injection. The injection would provide immunity for 12 hours before the injection. Last time it was difficult to release the poison in the crowd. This time, if the sonic weapon worked, the situation would definitely be one-sided. The Scarecrow was so crazy that it might just explode in the crowd. However, Bruce was a billionaire. The entire operation involved hundreds of people. He didn't have the time to make hundreds of bottles of injections. He could only give them to his own people. Even Felicity, who didn't go to the front lines, was given one too. However, he couldn't just ignore the righteous police officers and citizens. He racked his brains and made a strengthened version of the antidote. It had a capacity of 800 milliliters. He gave it to Robin, and it could protect her for an hour in the crowd after the battle. Barbara, you and Robin will work together this time. You two will deal with the Owl Court's Talon. I will also support you. It was the same team as last time. The enemy was missing Death Angel and Mr. Freeze. Logically speaking, they had the advantage. However, after Bruce's confirmation, Thea knew that the Talon wasn't a single person. It was a collective name for a group of people. God knows how many of them there were. If they were all as skilled as last time, it would be difficult for Thea to deal with 3 of them. Catwoman and Miss Bridget will be the mobile force to deal with any unexpected situations. Are there no problems? Let's go. Before they left, Bruce called Thea over and whispered in Chinese, "Help me keep an eye on Selena. I'm afraid that she and Talia." He didn't know what to say. He only felt that if either of the 2 women got hurt, he would feel terrible. At first, Thea was stunned when she heard the familiar yet unfamiliar Chinese. However, she quickly realized that it was Miss Shiva who told him that she knew Chinese. Batman knew all the mainstream languages in the world. Not only could he speak Chinese, but he could also speak Cantonese. Thea could only admire him for that. Chinese was indeed safe. He was also afraid that the people in the room would have other thoughts if they heard it. In this world, Chinese was a foreign language among foreign languages. Even though he didn't elaborate, Thea understood that he wanted her to help Talia when she was in danger. However, he was also afraid that Catwoman would think too much. Chapter 105. It seemed like he still had some feelings for Talia. It was not easy to be a good man. Thea could only reply in Mandarin, "I understand, I will take care of her." Both of them did not go into detail about who she was referring to. This time, during the Arkham invasion, Sia had reduced the number of normal arrows she brought along and brought along a lot of high-tech arrows. Last time, whether it was against the Angel of Death or Talia, it was proven that her archery skills were only good against normal people. If she did not have enough strength, she would not be fast enough. No matter how accurate her aim was, it was useless. If she still wanted to rely on her archery skills, she would have to increase her strength. Thea felt that her archery skills were no different from the future Olivier. The key was the thickness of her arm. Strength was the foundation of all physical battles. It was not easy being an archer. This time she did not bring her skateboard. She did not wear the cumbersome antiviral suit. Instead, she wore a red overcoat like she was going on an outing, carried her sword, and put on her infrared glasses. However, she regretted it the moment she reached the entrance of Arkham. If she had known, she would have brought her skateboard. This was because the group noticed that the entrance to Arkham had been repaired. The entrance was filled with people. Everyone was quiet, and the ones leading the way were the few Gotham celebrities that they had met before. Talia was sitting on top of the 5-meter-tall entrance of the asylum. She was still wearing the same dark green overcoat with a hood. She had a weapon on her waist, a quiver of arrows on her back, and a longbow in her hand. Why did they come out today? Were they not afraid of being wiped out by the missiles? Oh, Thea immediately understood. Talia must have received news that Batman was back. She knew that her lover would not dare to use missiles, so she brought a large group of people to fight. Thea regretted it. If she had known, she would have brought her skateboard. However, it was too late now. She lowered her head and ordered Lara, "Get the military helicopters here. If we can't beat them, they can cover our retreat." Yes, Thea felt like two groups of people had agreed to fight in the field after school. The elementary school students on both sides were already in position. Both sides were soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals, and the strong visual impact was constantly assaulting her brain. Since the other party dared to come out with such great fanfare, they must have something to rely on. He had to be careful. Seeing that both parties had arrived, Talia placed her left hand on the door and landed on the ground with a beautiful front somersault. She slowly walked out of the line and stood at the front, looking at Thea. Had she been the one behind the scenes all along? It was possible that she had both brains and subordinates. Thea saw that all the penguins and pig-faced people were standing quietly behind her. She was even more certain of her judgment. He wanted to let Gordon Sr. continue to assume the dangerous identity of the leader, but Catwoman had already taken the lead and walked out of the formation. Catwoman was fully armed today, with 3 daggers hidden under her tight black leather jacket. She held a long whip in her hand and a baton on her waist. Ever since she saw Talia, she had finally found a way to vent all her frustrations. "You're the cause of all this, right? You should know who I am. Let's have a showdown." Thea was happy to see them fight one-on-one. The two of them were about the same strength. Talia's martial arts had been learned scientifically, so her strength was stable. Catwoman's was much worse, and her level was sometimes high and sometimes low. However, when Catwoman attacked in a rage, it was hard to say whether or not her little universe would explode and kill the other party. Thea could only admire Uncle Bat's foresight. These words were still ringing in her ears, and the two women were about to fight. Her task was not difficult, as long as she could keep them alive. With a bitter smile, she drew an arrow and knocked it on the bow, ready to support the one who could not win at any time. However, to everyone's surprise, things took a big turn. Talia pointed at Catwoman, who was stepping forward, and said, "You and I have a personal grudge." She then pointed at Thea, who was watching the show, and said, "Her and I have a business matter." It was hard for Catgirl to describe her current state of mind. She had seen how Bruce had called Thea aside and warned her. Although she didn't understand Chinese, she knew what he was thinking as his lover for many years. He also had feelings for Talia. Where was her position? They had feelings for each other and a child, so it seemed more suitable than her. She stood up alone to challenge Talia, which meant that her life and death were up to fate. No matter who won or lost, this matter could be put to an end. However, when she mustered up her courage, she found that Talia didn't accept the challenge and even used the excuse that it was a business matter. This made her psychological barrier collapse, and her motivation to fight was gone. Since it's business, then go ahead. Thea felt that her glasses were about to fall off. She watched Catwoman walk back briskly. What happened to the fight? I was still waiting for support. What's the meaning of this? However, before she could figure out what to do next, Talia's words made her feel what it meant to be thunderstruck. Sister, come out. This battle should be ours. Talia stared at Thea and took off her hood, revealing her long brown hair. Who? Who was she talking to? Thea looked left and right. Was Nisha Al Ghul nearby? However, 2 seconds later, she found that everyone on the field was looking at her. Are you talking about me? I'm your sister? Your sister? How can I be your sister? Thea's imagination ran wild. Could it be that she was also the ninja master's daughter? Her mother couldn't have made friends in Nanderbart, right? Although according to the results of social network research, her mother didn't need 6 people to contact the ninja master, but they were too far away from each other. Thea knew that she had misunderstood. She looked at her appearance. She was about the same age as her sister, and her hair was also brown. Nisha liked to wear red and black clothes, and coincidentally, her battle suit was also red. More importantly, she knew the martial arts of the Assassin League. The ninja master and his good son-in-law Batman had a lot in common. They didn't care about women. The only woman in the league was probably his daughter. The future Sarah Lance also got in with Nisha's help. Thinking of Nisha, Thea said, I'm not Nisha. However, she regretted it immediately. How could an outsider know this name? As expected, Talia smiled faintly. Father didn't come out with you, right? Is this your trial? He sent you to catch a traitor like me. Father is still as heartless as ever. When Sia heard this, she broke down even more. Yes, you are really too smart. I am actually speechless. Nissa has indeed gone for a trial, and the timeline coincidentally matches up. But why did she come to Brother Tan? She went to Purgatory Island, Big Sister. Chapter 106. When the truth was revealed, not only did she feel devastated, even the hero faction was affected. Uncle Bruce, who was known as the man with the highest IQ, was monitoring the battle from afar. He was prepared to watch his 2 women fight, but he did not expect things to turn out this way. Thea, are you really? Although Bruce had stayed in Nanderbat for a long time, he had never seen Nissa in person. He only knew that she existed, but he was very clear about the rules of the Alliance, so he could also think of Talia's suspicions. At the same time, with his high IQ, he found clues from their names. Thea and Talia's names were very similar. In less than 5 seconds, he had already verified that the 2 of them were related by name, clan, and bloodline. There was a 90% chance that the 2 of them were related. That was why it was not good to read too many books. Thinking too much. Of course, Thea would not admit it. They were not related to each other in the first place. Ninja Master was also a famous bad boss. What did she have to do with him? We are not related, trust me. Her tone did not dispel Batman's suspicions. Old Master Bruce did not know how to react when his promising junior suddenly became his sister-in-law. He could only say that the world was so small. In fact, if Thea took off her hood and saw her face, Talia would know that she had guessed wrongly. Ninja Master had an Arabian face, but Thea's ancestors were all Caucasian. As long as one was not blind, they would be able to tell the difference. However, revealing her face was not in line with her principle of keeping a low profile. With her strength, she did not dare to be targeted by the perverts of Gotham, since she misunderstood. Then she would continue to misunderstand. Thea ignored the strange gazes around her and slowly walked out of the crowd. Talia thought that she was going to accept the challenge, so she also walked forward slowly. The 2 of them stopped when they were 10 steps away from each other. Let's fight using the Alliance's rules. If I lose, I'll take my men away. If you lose, the same goes for you, Talia suggested. She then waved her hand, and many men in black appeared around them. They were all wearing leather jackets and carrying bows. Thea didn't know if these were the elites she took with her when she betrayed the Alliance, or if they were recently trained. She sized them up and estimated that there were about 100 of them. If all of them were as strong as Yao Fei, they would be able to affect the balance of the battlefield. That's a good idea. Thea agreed with her. Batman, who was watching the battle from afar, couldn't wait for his woman to leave as soon as possible. He didn't want her to cause any more trouble in this lifetime. All right. Thea had the same idea. The 2 of them took off their bows at the same time and gently placed them on the ground. They looked at each other and drew their weapons. They each held their weapons and made a mysterious gesture. According to the Alliance's rules, This was a greeting to the ancient gods. Therefore, even though the ninja master was now rotten to the core, he was still a very traditional person who abided by the rules. The disciples he taught all knew this set of etiquette. Malcolm, who had been his adjutant for a period of time, was naturally familiar with this set of movements. For some reason, old Ma taught Thea everything without thinking. This caused a certain misunderstanding. The Assassin's Alliance had a strict hierarchy, and the movements of each level were actually slightly different. Coincidentally, old Ma used to be an adjutant, and he taught the movements of an adjutant. Talia had been the master's adjutant for a long time, and before she betrayed the alliance, she was also an adjutant. Old Ma could even be said to be her successor. This caused the movements of the two women to be exactly the same. The audience on the field could only see that the movements were elegant and simple. But looking at Thea's skillful movements, Batman, who was one of the 3 people on the field who knew this set of movements, couldn't help but ask through the headset, "Thea, are you a member of the Alliance?" She wanted to say that she wasn't from the Alliance, she was from the Horde. But at this time, Thea was fully focused on watching Talia's footsteps. She didn't have the time to explain. She said in a low voice, "No." But her words still caused a slight flaw. Talia waved the wolf fang in her hand and slashed at her neck. How could Thea be hit by such a simple slash? She held her sword with both hands and raised it up, blocking Talia's slash. Then she kicked Talia's stomach. As a teacher who trained Yao Fei and would train Green Arrow in the future, Talia was very experienced. She leaned to the side and dodged the kick. Then she changed her slash to a slice. Following the blade of Thea's sword, she slashed at her finger. Thea flicked her wrist and used the stabbing technique of Spanish fencing to attack Talia's middle. Not bad at close combat. Better than your archery skills. Talia immediately changed her move. Talia blocked the attack with her sword in front of her chest. "My archery skills are the worst. You underestimated me." Thea continued to stab, slash, hack and slash, trying to continue to gain the upper hand. Not bad at all. Talia had indeed underestimated Thea. She only felt that she had the upper hand in the last archery competition. Now that she was facing her younger sister, who was much younger than her, she underestimated her opponent. But no matter if it was the eldest daughter or the opposing faction, she couldn't lose. She also used speed to gain the upper hand. In the distance, Batman knew that his sudden interruption disrupted Thea's pace. He regretted it very much. Now that he saw her gradually equalizing the disadvantage, he felt a little better. Now that the two women were fighting, he also didn't want to see any casualties. He hated himself for being powerless. Previously, he could ask Thea to take care of Catwoman, but in the end they didn't fight. The main character didn't fight, but the helper fought. This really made him speechless. He wanted to wear the batsuit and go to the scene to help, but seeing that he was still on crutches, he didn't want to send himself to death. It would be embarrassing if he was knocked to the ground by a small soldier in the melee. He wanted to give advice from a distance, but he found that the two women were very fast. It was almost like they were competing with each other. They knew their own moves. There was no need for him to give advice. It was too late. He was very anxious. Who should he ask to be the insurance? His two apprentices were watching attentively. The two women were stronger than them. His apprentices were still a little behind. He couldn't count on them. Sigh. The only one in the field who was close to him in terms of strength was his old flame Catwoman. Selina, pay attention to their fight. If there's any danger, stop them. Bruce knew that Catwoman would understand his intentions as soon as he said this. He was helpless to let one lover protect another. Sure enough, Catwoman understood what he meant. She was jealous. She snorted heavily to show that she heard him. After that, she didn't say anything else. The fight between the two women in the field had reached a climax. Thea was slashed on her left shoulder by Talia, and Talia was punched in the face by her. Blood flowed down the corner of her mouth. The two women entered a stalemate again. They took 3 steps away from each other and took the opportunity to recover their strength. At the same time, they kept moving around the center of the field, trying to find each other's weaknesses. Chapter 107. Their fight this time was different from the previous archery contest. Last time it was just a casual exchange. At that time, Talia was worried about being ambushed by a ninja master, and Thea didn't want to fight her. so both of them were very restrained. This time it was different. Talia felt that her sister was valued by her father, and she couldn't get rid of the anger in her heart. Forget about Catwoman, she even forgot about her own son and husband, Batman. She just wanted to prove that she wasn't worse than her sister. At first, Thea was forced to do something beyond her ability, but she was strangely dragged out to take the bullet for Catwoman. She felt that this was Gotham's first injustice. Plus, she was worried about Batman's woman and Green Arrow's future teacher. But after a few dangerous situations, she threw away her worries. Who's afraid of who? There was nothing wrong with Catwoman being paired with Batty, and she could teach Green Arrow herself. There was nothing to be proud of. There was only one word to describe it, and that was fighting head-on. The two of them rested for less than half a minute, and then they continued to fight. Both sides were confused. Didn't they agree that this was Gotham's internal conflict? What was the meaning of these two outsiders coming here to fight to the death? They didn't dare to say anything as they watched the fight in full swing, and could only watch silently. Talia had spread the news all over the world, and everyone knew that she came thousands of miles away to find her husband with her child. Now that they saw her and Thea fighting fiercely, they couldn't help but think of something. I heard that she's here to fight for her husband? One of the Penguin's subordinates said to the people around him. I heard that the one fighting her is her sister. One of the Court of Owls, who claimed to be well informed, pointed with his sharp claws. Why is this sister fighting so fiercely? One of the Gotham Police Station's 5th Division's 12th Operation Team asked. You still don't understand? It's obvious that the two sisters are fighting over something. I can't go into too much detail. One of the veterans, who claimed to be very experienced, told the people around him a story that couldn't be told. Both sides had nothing to do, so they could only kill time by gossiping. The story became more and more bizarre, and after a lot of artistic embellishments, it now seemed quite plausible. As for Catwoman, one of the protagonists of the original story, she had long been forgotten by the masses. Therefore, when the final version of the story finally reached Catwoman's ears through her little friend, Miss Firefly, she was dumbfounded. The story had evolved into a very melodramatic one. Talia's younger sister had admired Batman since she was a child. When she grew up, she came out to seek true love. When her biological sister found out about it, she resolutely opposed it, which led to the war in Gotham. This news was leaked by one of Talia's subordinates who had followed him for many years. The authenticity of the news was very high, and after being deeply processed by the masses, it became like this. As for Catwoman, Talia didn't value Catwoman at all, and her subordinates didn't even know that there was such a person, so there was nothing to do with Catwoman in this story. Catwoman, who was brilliantly ignored, didn't know what expression to make. Her eyelids drooped, and she felt the gazes around her. She could only think, you guys can just ignore me. I'll steal everything from your house later. She didn't know that not only did she take the bullet, but she also took the blame. Thea and Talia's duel had entered the final stage. Talia had the advantage in terms of experience. Both of them were taught by their fathers, but when compared to a ninja master, the difference was obvious. Although Thea had been trained by Madame Shiva for a while in the later stages, her experience was still not as good as Talia's. Thea had the advantage in terms of physical strength. She was just 16 years old while Talia was already in her 30s. She had also given birth, so her body had already passed its golden age. Don't believe what the experts said about not harming the body when they said that giving birth was not harmful. That was all nonsense. No heroine had ever become stronger the more she gave birth. Thea tilted her head to avoid the oncoming blade. She turned in the opposite direction with the force of turning her head, and swung her sword towards Talia's waist with her left hand. Talia was a little tired from her previous moves, so she couldn't stop in time. She could only bend her knees and fold her upper body in half to form an iron bridge to avoid the extremely fast sword. Thea didn't let her off. Before she could get up, her right hand caught up with her left hand. She exerted force with both hands, and the horizontal slash turned into a downward slash. Talia didn't have time to get up, so she could only roll half a circle and use her legs to clamp Thea's legs, trying to bring her down as well. Thea saw through her intentions and knew that she couldn't fall into her rhythm. She exerted force with both legs, and her left leg moved forward while her right leg moved horizontally, forming a T-step. This wasn't the technique of a ninja master. This was the Kalaripayat, an ancient Indian martial art taught by Ms. Shiva, who claimed to be Han Chinese but actually had some Indian ancestry. It was a type of ancient Indian martial art that incorporated many sacrificial and dance movements. This set of martial arts was just SOSO for Thea. She always felt that punches to the flesh were the way to go. She had never been interested in this kind of fighting style that looked more like a dance than a martial art. But today she suddenly used it and it really worked. A ninja master might know this martial art, but Talia really didn't. When she exerted force with both legs, she realized that her opponent wasn't moving at all. She knew that she was in trouble. Sure enough, Thea saw this heaven-sent opportunity. She swung her right hand in a half-circle and slashed at Talia's neck. Talia was still on the ground, so there was no way for her to dodge. She was upset at the thought of being defeated by her sister, who was half her age. Was it really meaningless for her to train so hard? Was her talent really that bad? Unwilling to admit defeat, he also used the knife to stab Sia's heart from the bottom up. "Selena, hurry." Uncle Bat was so anxious that he almost jumped out of the monitor. The two exchanged blows so quickly that it was too late for them to react. Catwoman took out a throwing knife that she had prepared beforehand to save the day. Of course, Thea wouldn't die together with her. She was already prepared for a counterattack. When she saw Catwoman's knife coming at her, she pulled out a dagger that she had never used in this battle. With a clang, she parried Catwoman's long knife. She placed the sword in her right hand on Talia's neck and said calmly, "You lost." "Thea, don't." Batman was the only one who could plead in her ear. Gordon wanted to say something, but he forced himself to hold it back. "Kill me for your trial." Talia threw the knife to the ground calmly. She didn't get up and sat on the ground ready to die. "Trial my asteriskus." Thea had already won. She wanted to complain again. "Will you drop equipment if I kill you? Will I get an achievement?" Besides, Batman wouldn't let her do it. However, it wasn't right for her to stop now. This was a sacred thing for the Assassin's League. Didn't you see Talia's 100 or so lackeys watching in silence? None of them had the intention to save their boss. Batman, who knew the rules, was also in a dilemma. Hastily interrupting was equivalent to insulting both of them at the same time. So he could only watch the result silently. Thea was stunned for 5 seconds. Damn it, why isn't anyone giving me a way out? Just as she was thinking about how to end the fight, someone who didn't know the rules and thought that he was the boss jumped out. 3 sharp blades that looked like grinding wheels spun and flew at her. Chapter 108. Thea couldn't help but want to give this ignorant and fearless guy a thumbs up. The ninja master was most particular about rules. Or rather, he had lived for more than 800 years and had lost most of his humanity, leaving only this little bit of spiritual sustenance. Facing the rapidly spinning blades, Thea wasn't afraid at all. She dodged one, slashed another with her long sword, and cut the last one in half by Talia, who got up from the ground. Looking at the angry Talia, Thea only felt that the Assassin League's rules were quite interesting. She didn't blame herself for wanting to kill her, but she hated someone for helping her. She was really strong. Since the duel was interrupted, naturally it couldn't continue. Thea decided to put on a show. "Who interrupted us?" she shouted. Talia also looked at her own team with a sword in her hand, trying to find the guy who interrupted her sacred ceremony. The two of them didn't see who interfered, but there were more than 100 of Talia's followers who had good eyesight. They communicated with each other, and instantly, more than 100 arrows were pointed at the short, weird-looking penguin man. Speaking of which, the ninja master's syllabus was written in an unknown way. It was called the Assassin League, but other than Batman, who transferred early on, the rest of the students were all archers. Black arrow, green arrow, and red arrow. It was really speechless. At this time, the penguin man who was targeted by so many archers was a little dumbfounded. He had been thinking about how to stab his companions more efficiently all his life. Today he finally did something good. Seeing that Talia was about to die, he shot 3 throwing knives with his umbrella. However, he guessed correctly at the beginning but not the ending. With more than 100 arrows pointing at him, it definitely didn't feel good. The pig-faced man beside him subconsciously moved a few steps to the side. "You interrupted the sacred duel of the Assassin League. According to the ancient law, I want to kill you. Come out and duel with me." If you win, you live. If you lose, you die. Thea said these words firmly. She repeated them twice in English and ancient Arabic. She raised the sword in her hand and pointed at the penguin man from afar. If you win, you live. If you lose, you die. Talia's underlings around him were excited as if they were celebrating a festival. A few of them even pointed their swords at the sky to exert psychological pressure on the penguin. Talia was not at all displeased that her underling had gone to support the enemy from 1 minute ago. The belief of following the rules had long been ingrained in her bones. She did not feel like the one being saved at all. She also drew her sword and pointed at the penguin man. Come out. You must die. The people on Gordon's side were a little confused by this matter. Looking at Thea's stance, she was trying to cause internal strife. What a genius! Batman understood these rules. Seeing that the people on his side had nothing to do, he told them about the life of the ninja master as if he was telling a story. He also talked about the various good and bad rules in the Alliance, which made the listeners a little dumbfounded. There was actually someone in this world who had lived for 800 years. Thea did not know that her clear past had been wrapped up by Uncle Bat using the mysterious atmosphere of the Alliance, making it seem blurred. Is there some kind of misunderstanding? The penguin man saw that the crowd around him had automatically emptied out. He did not dare to fight with Thea. The two women had fought for half an hour, and the flashes of their swords were frightening. He had relied on schemes to get to where he was not fighting. Plus, he was a cripple. How could he win? The will of the Alliance is not to be questioned. You insulted the sacred duel, which is the same as insulting the ninja master. Thea felt that her acting skills must have improved a lot. Did she have anything to do with the ninja master? She was just using the tiger's skin as a flag. Sure enough, when she mentioned the ninja master, Talia's underlings roared to help her. At this moment, the penguin man really wanted to faint or someone to shoot him. As the former underground emperor of Gotham, although he had never met the ninja master, he still knew about the ninja master. He only felt that the ninja master was a legendary figure. Did I insult him? No, I really wanted to help. Okay, if you don't want to come out, then I'll just do it. Thea knew when to stop. It was fine to use the tiger's skin for a while, but if she used it for too long, it would attract the tiger's attention. Her relationship with Old Ma could not be exposed, and Talia was also a defector. It was hard to say who the ninja master's first target would be. She took out a frost arrow and aimed it at the penguin man. This time she could use the Alliance's ancient tradition to kill this guy. Batman knew the rules, so it was fine if he saw it. After all, it was the ninja master's fault. She wondered if this guy's nickname was Penguin Man because his resistance to cold was so strong. Freezing Man could be exempted, so could he? Thea was ready to show them the power of science. Whoosh, an arrow was shot. The penguin man was pointed at by more than 100 arrows. It had to be said that he was a famous person and had some decisiveness. He subconsciously wanted to dodge, but he was afraid of causing a scene of hundreds of arrows. Therefore, when faced with Thea's arrow, he hesitated for a moment and decided to take it head-on. He hoped that he would not die. In order to leave a good name for the righteous side, Thea did not aim at his vitals. Instead, she aimed at the penguin man's lame leg. Puff! The moment the arrow entered his leg, the penguin man felt the surrounding temperature drop. He knew that he had been tricked. Wasn't it supposed to be a normal arrow? These were the last words that appeared in his mind. However, when the words reached his mouth, his lips were too weak to speak. "Tisk, what penguin man?" Sia pursed her lips. "This is all fake." He bragged so viciously and fiercely. In less than 2 seconds, his legs were already covered in frost. The speed of the frost was extremely fast. I believe that in less than 10 seconds, he would be able to go into the ice and pretend to be the Wumo King. Just as Thea was thinking about how the penguin man was dead, his subordinates would scatter in all directions. She would stabilize Talia and leave the rest of the soldiers to Gordon and the others. No matter how many reinforcements there were, they would not be afraid. This time they had won completely. However, an angry roar broke her train of thought. A tall and muscular figure jumped down from a building not far away. In less than 5 seconds, he covered a distance of 100 meters. The person reached out his thick arms and ignored the gradually solidifying ice. He grabbed the penguin man's neck and pulled him up from the ground as if he was pulling out a carrot. His left hand pulled out the arrow from the penguin man's leg. He looked at the penguin man's pale face, grabbed his lame leg, and slammed it back and forth on the ground a dozen times like a dead dog. The ice on the penguin man's body was shattered. He lifted the penguin man up and looked at the result. With a sinister smile, he handed the penguin man to the penguin man beside him. Bane. Batman looked at the familiar figure on the monitor and said hatefully. Sia also saw this guy who had suddenly appeared. She had expected this. After all, Talia was here, so Bane wouldn't be far away. It was just that this guy had ruined her plan, which was a little annoying. Today Bane came fully armed. His muscular body was at least 2 meters tall. He was bare-chested and carried his iconic green canister on his back. From time to time, liquid would enter his mouth through a tube that was covered by a mask. He said in a muffled voice, Talia, this is not what we agreed on. Chapter 109. Talia sneered. I don't need to explain to you what I'm doing. Bane, with his huge head, looked at her without backing down. Now is not the time. The two of them exchanged glances in the air. In the end, Talia waved her hand and the hundreds of men in black put down their bows. I won't be participating in today's battle. You can have fun. Talia blew Thea a kiss and left with her men. Do you want to suffer the wrath of the Alliance? Sia glared at Bane fiercely. It had to be said that she was a little too immersed in the role. She had perfectly imitated the vengeful spirit of a ninja master. To be honest, Bane didn't dare to provoke the master. Even many villains who were so bad that they were fuming with smoke would keep a respectful distance from the master, who had no magic and no technological equipment. You don't know how many trump cards he has prepared in the past 800 years. As a junior, Bane doesn't dare to confront him face to face. But he couldn't back down in front of so many people. Talia, who could have split the firepower, ran away first, but she fought for a long time, so it was barely acceptable. If he ran away without fighting, it would be too embarrassing. He had taken so much money from the Court of Owls, so he had to deal with it. I have no intention to be the master's enemy. I also respect the rules of the Alliance, but this guy can't die today. Bane's words could be described as groveling. He had never been so cowardly since he became famous. He secretly hated the Penguin Man. Why did you interfere and cause trouble? If Thea was still the same as before, she would have stepped down. She didn't want to fight with Bane. This guy had a big head and a thick neck. He looked like a warrior boss with infinite strength. It was too easy for him to deal with an agility type like her. But the ninja master's tiger skin could scare Bane. But at the same time, it was a double-edged sword. It also limited her. If she said, okay, then let's go home, that wouldn't be in line with her previous image. Anyone could see the problem. This role-playing game had to continue. Thea said gloomily, then you can try. After saying that, he used his fastest speed to draw an arrow. He didn't use his eyes to aim, but instead used his powerful perception to shoot an arrow at the unconscious penguin. Bane had also been paying attention to prevent her from attacking, but he had never seen Thea shoot an arrow. He had only heard from Talia that she was not as good as her. Now that he was facing Thea's highest level arrow, he had underestimated her. It was too late for him to run over. Penguin was the one with the most underlings present. The Owl Court had paid him a large sum of money so that he wouldn't die here today. So Bane had no choice but to give it his all. The green canister behind him boiled violently, and a large amount of venom flowed into Bane's body through the pipe. Ah! His arm visibly thickened. He grabbed a gang member beside him and threw the arrow at Thea. If the trajectory of Thea's arrow could still be vaguely seen, the human sandbag that Bane threw later had exceeded the retina's reception limit. The unlucky guy took Thea's arrow head-on and was killed before he could even make a sound. That's so fierce. The people present might only think that it was powerful, but Thea, who was close to the limit of human physical strength, knew the huge gap between them all too well. Her arrow's speed was about 300 feet per second, which was 90 meters. If the arrow kept moving at a constant speed, it would be 300 kilometers per hour. However, Bane's hasty throw was estimated to be more than 500 kilometers per hour. If the weight of the arrow and the air resistance were taken into account, the value would be even higher. It was true that strength created miracles. The ancients didn't lie. This person could only be defeated with wisdom, not brute force. Thea was momentarily stunned by this guy's shocking move. Bane's hasty use of the venom to strengthen himself was actually not a good thing. Now that the venom was attacking his brain, he threw away his worries about the Alliance and glared at Thea fiercely. This is indeed the Alliance's style. A bunch of scumbags who only know how to sneak attack. Do you dare to fight me one-on-one? Thea had more than 500 underlings with her, so how could she fight him one-on-one? She would spare his life this time, but next time she would bring a skateboard and beat him up. Layla, are your snipers ready? Let's shoot him twice first. I want to see how strong his defense is. Thea's so-called 2 shots was just an adjective. The Heaven's Eye Society's agents understood perfectly. The snipers from 3 directions fired 5 shots without stopping. Bang! Bang! Bane was very experienced. Perhaps because he was not very agile, he had no intention of dodging at all. He covered his face and heart with his hands and took 15 bullets head-on. The bullets were enough to penetrate a 4 mm thick steel plate from 1,200 meters away. However, such an impressive result was ineffective against Bane's strong body. The bullets were stuck in the muscle layer, and the ones at bad angles only scratched Bane's skin a little. With his strong self-healing ability, bullets were constantly squeezed out of his muscles and fell to the ground. No matter how confident Thea was, she did not think that her bow and arrow could be stronger than a sniper rifle. As for using her sword to fight, it was not within her plan at all. This guy was destined to be dealt with by her master. She would rather be a bystander. However, if she wanted to dodge, she would have to ask Bane for permission. He wanted to scold Thea for not following the rules of the martial arts world. What happened to the cold weapons competition? She looked cool when she squeezed out bullets, but in fact, how could the bullets not hurt when they hit the body? Although the venom accelerated the healing of the body, it did not come without a price. The venom would constantly corrode his brain. Every time he used it, he would need to recover for a long time to keep his mind clear. He did not want to waste time talking nonsense. With the intention to end the battle quickly, he ran towards Thea like a bull. You've got your eyes set on me, haven't you? Thea's temper rose. I just don't want to hit you. Not that I'm afraid of you. I'll let you see the advanced martial arts concepts of the East. I'll let you know what it means to use softness to conquer strength. I'll let you know what it means to use softness to conquer strength. With a whoosh, the 2 arrows flew out and hit the ground 1 step in front of Bane's feet. A white substance called spider silk, which was actually a chemical product, instantly filled Bane's vision. What the hell is this? He subconsciously wanted to push the thing in front of him away, but when his hand touched the spider silk, he found that it was stuck. 2 tons of strength erupted in an instant, wanting to tear the thing apart. But his move was already predicted by Thea. Because of his strong pull, the remaining spider silk was pulled away by him and stuck to his head and face. As he continued to struggle, his skin became more and more glued. One must know that he jumped out bare-chested. In less than 10 seconds, his original appearance could not be seen. From afar he looked like a big white cocoon. Don't be in a daze, quickly organize the attack. Thea felt that her companions might have been too busy watching the show, and had already forgotten what they were here for, so she kindly reminded them. Chapter 110. Before they could react, Thea swung her sword with her right hand and pointed it at the sky. For the glory of the Alliance, no, the words quickly changed to for the freedom of Gotham. When the first gunshot rang out on the battlefield, she had already found cover and rested in a corner. It couldn't be helped. After fighting for half an hour, Talia wasn't easy to deal with. Not only was she exhausted, but she was also injured. She looked at her wounds. They were all superficial wounds. Her clothes looked good, but they had almost zero defense. Next time, she would have to get a set of high-density Kevlar from Batman. She ignored the battle in front of her, jumped over the crowd, and went to the back to rehydrate and bandage her wounds. What? Sisters fighting over a husband? She had just taken 2 sips of water when she was shocked by the news that Felicity whispered to her. What kind of logic was this? What happened to not spreading rumors? There were more than 500 people here, and that was enough to sentence her. When she found out that the final version of the story had been spread among the people on the battlefield, She did not know what expression to make. You Gotham people have too much time on your hands. That's why your imagination is so wild. She squinted her eyes and looked at the battlefield. Her first thought was to silence them. Did she have any weapons that could kill all of them? That would be difficult. Half of her pride from trapping Bane disappeared. She had taken the bullet and taken the blame at the same time. Batman, Catwoman, why don't you guys explain yourselves? She was depressed and could not be bothered to fight. From afar, she watched Catwoman take on the pig-faced man, and Barbara and Robin take on the two Talons with their swords. Catwoman was not sure if she was depressed or relaxed. She was supposed to be the female lead, but now she had no scenes left. She was depressed. Her stick was aimed at the pig-faced man's head. The enemy's head was already larger than a normal person's, but now it looked even bigger. Was she planning to beat him until he became an idiot? Barbara and her husband worked well together. The two Talons were top killers trained by the Owl Court since they were young. They were not weak either. It was hard to tell who would win in a 2 versus 2 situation. Thea, I know you need to recover your strength, but you won't be able to trap Bane for long. Bruce, who was monitoring the situation from afar, was very concerned about the enemy who had broken his back. Oh! Thea nodded in understanding. Her eyelids drooped as she looked at the large cocoon in the distance. Bruce was right. At first, Bane was not really trapped in the web. He had fainted because he had absorbed too much of the chemical substance from the spider silk. Now, with his amazing resistance to poison, he had gradually regained consciousness and was struggling with all his might. Counting the arrows on his body, he originally had 5 frost arrows. Killer Crocodile used 2, and the Penguin just now wasted 1. It seemed that he would have to use another one today. The distance was a little far, so he could only use projectile. Fortunately, the power of the frost arrow was not reflected in the arrow. It did not matter if it hit the target or not, as long as it was within range. He pointed his bow at the sky and shot another frost arrow in Bane's direction. This time there was no big head and thick neck to disturb the situation. The effect of the frost arrow was good. In just 10 seconds, Bane, who was about to break free, was frozen solid again. You have the ability to freeze too? Miss Firefly, who also did not fight in the front, looked at Thea with a strange tone. What's the meaning of your eagerness to try? You have such a big opinion of the Frost team. If you see the Frost team in the future, what kind of expression will you make? Of course, Thea could not say that Miss Firefly's condition was too serious. Medicine could not suppress it, so she had to prepare for physical therapy next time. She said embarrassedly, "It's not my ability, it's the power of the arrowhead. And there's only one arrowhead left." That's a good move. Is it liquid nitrogen or liquid ammonia? In the distance, Batman saw her arrowhead for the first time. The cobweb arrow just now was already very impressive, but now the effect was even better. Knowing that she could not hide it, Thea and Bruce chatted for a while. The two did not talk about the core technology, and only discussed the theory. I say stop chatting. Help us out first. Barbara Robin was a little tired facing 2 well-trained claws. Listening to them talk about all kinds of messy elements, she was getting more and more annoyed. Okay, I'm coming. Thea was not so easy to talk to because she wanted to flatter Barbara. After all, she first came to Gotham to rob the rich. Now, who in Gotham was richer than the Court of Owls? The accumulation of dozens of families for more than 200 years, however, this matter could not be done in public. It required some secret methods. She took out a special arrowhead. This arrowhead was installed with the nanoscale tracker. It was stolen from Ray Palmer's company by one of Old Ma's men. Old Ma thought it was useless and gave it to Thea. Even Felicity did not know about the arrowhead's creation. The Court of Owls was rich, but they hid it well. In order to find this group of fat sheep, Thea decided to use the tracker on the 2 claws. She aimed at one of the claws that was less agile. Robin's baton hit him, and he could only dodge to the side and look for an opportunity to counterattack. Thea kept moving in the crowd and saw this flaw. Without hesitation, she pulled out an arrow and shot. Her archery skills were not as good against Bane and Talia because one of them was strong and the other was agile. However, it was just right to deal with these people whose strength was between 2nd tier and 1st tier. The arrow hit him squarely in the stomach. Ouch! Even though the claws were brainwashed and did not have any sense of right or wrong, They could still feel pain. Knowing that he was ambushed, he waved the sword in his hand like a windmill and forced Robin to back off. He gritted his teeth and pulled out the arrow from his stomach. He looked around for the person who ambushed him. At this time, Thea retreated back into the crowd. She turned on the switch on her glasses and confirmed that the nanoscale tracker had entered his body and attached to his organs. She nodded with satisfaction and turned off the tracker. Now was not the time. Sia, our spies have reported that the major crime families in the city are gathering their forces and rushing towards us. Lara, who had always been quiet, reported the bad news at this time. How far are we? Less than 2 blocks. Was this premeditated, or did the Court of Owls do this on the spur of the moment? Thea felt that it was the latter. Talia's departure had dealt a heavy blow to the balance of power between the two sides. This was probably something they did not expect. If they were attacked from the front and the back, they would definitely lose. Thea observed the strength of the people in the battlefield. Selena, come back quickly. Catwoman heard the order and quickly sent the pig-faced man away. What's the matter? Thea handed her an arrow. You've seen it before. It's my magnetic arrow. I need you to insert it behind the enemy. It's best if you can cover the enemy within a range of 50 meters. Chapter 111. Sir, order your men to wait for the signal. Once the enemy is out of weapons, we will charge in and take them out. The field was too big for Thea to shoot that far, so she could only ask the parkour expert Catwoman to do the job. Thea, the thermal imaging shows that the enhanced man is coming out. Felicity, who had been staring at the monitor, also brought bad news. Robin, go prepare the wavelength transmitter. Thea fired a barrage of arrows to force Talon back. She then covered Barbara and herself as they retreated back to the main force. Regardless of whether they retreated or counterattacked, it was always a good idea to regroup. Catwoman, who was as agile as a human could be, ran from high to low. She weaved through the crowd and buildings. She had an excellent sense of direction, and after a few turns, she arrived at the back of the main force. She then used the dart technique to insert the arrows into the ground behind the battlefield. It's done. Catwoman said to Thea behind her. Find a place with thick walls and hide. Thea estimated the time and pressed the switch on the bow. Just like yesterday, a low humming sound was heard. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Many of the Arkham bandits were shaken by the loud noise, and they didn't even notice that their weapons were gone. Attack! Director Gordon couldn't wait to blow the bugle and raise the star-spangled banner high. The old man took the lead and rushed up with his pistol. His men saw how reckless the director was, and how the enemy had lost their weapons. What was there to be afraid of? They charged forward like they were on steroids. The ratio of casualties on the battlefield instantly increased. The unarmed bandits faced the armed police. It was like the Native Americans facing the colonists. Even though their hearts were filled with hatred, they still fell to the ground unwillingly. Although Chief Gordon couldn't bear it, he knew that the enemy's reinforcements were coming. Having been on the battlefield, he knew his priorities and didn't mention anything about the Miranda Clause at all. His subordinates were also in a killing frenzy and had long forgotten that they were police officers and not soldiers. In later history, this day would be known as the Gotham Massacre. Countless humanitarian defenders sat in air-conditioned rooms and expressed their dissatisfaction with the massacre caused by the Gotham Police Department. Of course, this was a story for later. At this moment, not knowing that they were in the middle of a historical event, the police officers were rather restrained, but the hot-blooded citizens and veterans were overjoyed. They could no longer control the violence in their hearts, and they held their submachine guns and fired at the empty-handed criminals. In less than a minute, the dark ground of Arkham Square was dyed red by the blood of sin. Both the elite scarecrows and the loyal penguins fell to the ground in droves. To be honest, Batman didn't feel good when he saw this scene. But he also knew that he couldn't stop it. This was war. Either the good guys would be sacrificed or the bad guys would be wiped out. It was impossible to knock everyone out and take them away. Thea and Gordon's decision wasn't wrong. Thea, on the other hand, didn't feel guilty. These were all bad guys, so if you locked them up, they wouldn't do anything bad. She noticed that some of the veterans were losing control, so she walked over to Lara and whispered, "The enhancers are about to attack from the west. You should lead them there and hold off the first wave of attacks." Both of them knew who she was referring to. The mastermind behind the scenes started to panic. Seeing that his men were being slaughtered like never before, the enhancers that he controlled did not leave through the door. Instead, he used explosives to open up a path, and over 200 enhancers charged out. The ones facing the strong enemy were the veterans. They were purposely led to the side by Lara's agents in disguise, and they were just in time to face the strongest wave of attacks since the beginning of the war. Thea didn't immediately order for the sonic weapons to be used. Instead, she watched coldly. On one hand, she wanted to reduce the number of uncontrollable factors, and on the other hand, she wanted the enhancers to enter the attack range. As the veterans continued to die, until there were no more enhancers coming out of the asylum, she nodded to Robin. This time, the sound wave was different from Sia's magnetic arrow. Her magnetic arrow was purely collateral damage. Master Bat's infrasound was the real deal. Before anyone on the battlefield could notice anything, the 200-plus enhancers had already started to stagger. The effect is not bad. Thea gestured to Director Gordon. Let's continue. Can these people still be saved? The old director was still trying to salvage the situation, but Thea shook her head. The genetic transformation is irreversible. They are no longer the original citizens, Director. The old director, who was known as the Executioner Gordon in the years to come, had nothing to lose. What difference did it make if they killed 300 or 500 people? With a wave of his hand, everyone started to focus fire on the new targets. It had to be said that the effects of the biochemical experiment were obvious. These people were much stronger than the dead bandits on the ground. Many of them could still run forward after being shot 4 or 5 times. But as more and more people fell to the ground, the remaining few with thick skin had to face the barrage of 5 or 6 guns at the same time. They were bleeding profusely, and the sonic weapons were still emitting infrasound waves, which increased the casualties of the enhancers. Bang! An earth-shattering sound pulled Thea's gaze to the east. Bane, who was frozen by her, had made countless cracks in the ice. Half of his strong arm was already stretched out. The loud sound was the result of his all-out attack. This was the first time Thea saw someone who could defrost himself. Although this method was a little violent, this guy's strength was indeed beyond scientific calculation. This was too exaggerated. Did she have any other way? Thea, get out of the way. He has lost his mind. Batman knew this enemy well and quickly reminded them. Yes, breaking the ice from the inside. How strong was that? At this time, Bane's eyes were bloodshot. He broke the ice on his body with a few punches and kicks. The muscles on his upper body were bulging like a small mountain. The venom on his back had decreased by 1/5, and there was still a lot of it being delivered to his lips from the can. This guy had gone berserk because of her. Thea thought this was the most reasonable explanation. Whoever went up now would die. The military helicopters that were originally prepared to deal with the crime families had no choice but to participate in the battle ahead of time. She turned to Lara and said, "Shoot him with your helicopter cannons and see if you can lure him away. If he leaves the crowd, use the missiles." She raised her hand and made a cutting motion. What about Batman's fated battle? She really didn't think that much. Besides, looking at this berserk guy, Master Bruce should just go to sleep. You can't beat him, so I'll help you take care of him first. The military helicopters were very fast. They quickly drove over from their previous hiding spot and rained bullets on the big fool on the ground who was emitting green gas. At this time, Bane could be considered as Super Bane. After the brain was stimulated by the venom, his body's potential was fully activated. He was immune to the bullets to a certain extent. He grabbed the things around him and threw them into the air. When the military helicopters saw that they had successfully lured Bane, they began to shoot a few times and flew a distance away, trying to lure Bane away.